to our July 25th Board of Selectmen meeting. I please ask you to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will start with the reading of the agenda. We'll go over our regular meeting minutes for June 13th, then our special meeting minutes for June 26th. We'll then move on to community relations, announcements, and open forums. We have 4 items under appointments and resignations. We have an appointment for the Personnel Board. We have an appointment for the Records Access Officer. We have an appointment for the CMRPC Delegate. And we have reappointments for terms expiring June 30th, 2017. We have several scheduled appointments tonight. We have a 6:45 with Jim Philbrook and Ann Salou about a grant award. We have a 6:50 appointment with Bill Reed for the Last Green Valley. We have a 7 o'clock appointment for John O'Rourke for the Good Energy. We have a 7:15 appointment for 508 LLC. And we have a 7:30 appointment for the Municipal Building Committee report for the archival storage and parking lot expansion. We have 1 item under new business, and that's the FY17 MassWorks grant. Under old business, we have 2 items. We have a 1-day special license request to change date at St. Joseph's Church, and we have regional dispatch. We'll then move on to community reports, Board of Selectmen policy reviews, then the town administrator's report, and then any other business unknown in town posting. We will have a Board of Selectmen goals and objectives meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at Fort Joseph Hill, and our next regular Selectmen's meeting will be August 15th. And with that, what are the board's wishes for our June 13th meeting minutes?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion that we approve the June 13th meeting minutes as printed.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstain. Abstain.
Abstain, 2 abstains. Chair votes aye. Motion passes with 2 ayes and 2 abstentions. All right, we'll move on to our minutes of special meeting for June 26th. What are the board's wishes?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes, the special meeting minutes of June 26th as printed.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Now move on to announcements. Fire prevention, safety, and emergency preparedness will be Wednesday, July 12th. Oh, this looks old. I lost my packet. Sorry, thank you.
Yep.
We'll be holding the Blueberry Festival on July 30th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at 4 Joseph Hill Road. There'll be live music performances by Casual Fridays and Thick and Thin. Live animal show by the Animal Adventures Family Zoo and Rescue Center. The show starts at 12:30 p.m. There'll be fresh blueberry shortcake with whipped toppings, an amateur blueberry bake-off and auction, and a pie-eating contest. There'll be over 30 vendor booths, crafters, and artisans. There'll be Irish step dancing performance by Lee Irish Dance, food trucks, free games, raffle tables, face painting, sand art, crystal therapy, psychic readings, and locally grown blueberries for sale. Old Home Day weekend will be held Saturday, September 2nd through Monday, September 4th. Booth applications are available at the Town of Charlton website. Are there any other announcements? Is there anyone here for open forum? Seeing none, we'll move to our first item under appointments and resignations, the appointment for the Personnel Board. Ms. Kramer?
Yes, sir. Attached is a letter of interest and talent bank form from Kathleen Schmidt seeking to be appointed to the Personnel Board. This was forwarded to Rachel Hartwig, the chairman of the Personnel Board, who feels that Ms. Schmidt would be an excellent candidate. Due to not being able to have a quorum for tonight's meeting, they are asking the board to appoint Ms. Schmidt so they would be able to have a quorum in the future. I would recommend the board make the appointment. The term of expiration date is June 30th, 2019.
Thank you. What are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion that we appoint Ms. Schmidt to the Personnel Board.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions or noes? Seeing none, chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 2, the appointment for a records access officer. Town clerk, Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. As you know, the new public records law took effect on January 1st, 2017. One of the requirements was to appoint records access officers, which were done at your December 20th, 2016 meeting. Darlene Tully was appointed as the RAO for the town clerk's office, but did not seek re-election. You are being asked to appoint the current town clerk, Karen LaCroix, as the records access officer for the clerk's office.
Thank you. And what are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair,
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion that we appoint Town Clerk Karen LaCroix as Records Access Officer.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Item number 3, the appointment for the CMRPC delegate. Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. As you're aware, Rich Kayer did not receive reappointment to the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. The opening was placed on cable and the town's website. One request has been received from Peter Boyer, who would be interested in filling this vacancy. The expiration date would be June 30th, 2018. I would recommend the board make the appointment.
Thank you. And what are the wishes of the board? Mr. Swenson?
I would recommend that we appoint Peter Boria as our delegate to the CMRPC.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 4, the reappointments for terms expiring June 30th, 2017, a continuation from a previous meeting. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. At your last meeting, you were provided with a list of reappointments. We still had some responses we were waiting for. You were asked tonight to reappoint the following: Don Konopaki to the Activities Council, Andy McMahon to the Lakes and Ponds Committee, and Cliff Cloutier to the Technology Committee. All of those appointments would expire June 30th, 2018. The following list is of open seats. Activities Council has 2 alternates. The Bylaw Committee has 3 members. CMRPC Delegate is 1. Conservation has 1 member opening. Dam Monitors, Conservation will be making recommendations. If anyone's interested in that, should send in letters. Register of Voters, it's a Democrat, waiting to hear from the committee, and the WRTA alternate member. The openings have been placed on cable and the town's website. Certainly, if anyone at home is listening to this and has an interest in any of those, they can contact our office.
Absolutely. And what are the wishes of the board for the 3 reappointments?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Singer?
for those 3 appointments, I would move that we appoint them as specified to each position for the terms listed.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Singer?
so just for a point of clarification, we just read off a list of open appointments for the public who may be watching. So, but unless I'm mistaken, we just saw the appointment for the CMRPC delegate, so there's either no opening or there's another position?
There would be another position,
So there is another one open.
my understanding,
I
yes.
believe there is an alternate as well. So if you're out there, these 10
Call.
positions could use to be filled. Definitely need to be filled. All right, with that, we are a little early for our 6:45. Do you think we can get through our new business item, Ms. Cribb?
Yes, sir.
If you'll indulge me, we'll go to item number 1 under new business, the FY17 Mass Works grant on page 51.
Okay. As you know, we are in the process of writing a grant to install water infrastructure on Route 20 before the reconstruction begins by Mass DOT in 2019. The grant is due August 4th, which will be before your next meeting, and we are being assisted by Central Mass Planning Commission. You remember Andrew Lowe, as he wrote our successful grant for the Town Hall elevator. This is also the project that was discussed when the Lieutenant Governor met with you last Thursday. I have attached a draft motion for you to review tonight, so hopefully it can be submitted with the grant. It authorizes my office to apply for and accept the grant if awarded. The state wants confirmation that if it awards a grant, the town will accept the money. Attached is the motion language.
Thank you, Ms. Graver. And what are the wishes of the board? All right, some
So
discussion, where
my
is-
recommendation would be that you go to the next page, and if someone is willing to make a motion, you would read the whereases. And read that into the record.
That's part of the motion, right?
Mr. Swenson?
I would like to make a motion that whereas the MassWorks infrastructure program was established to provide a one-stop shop for municipalities and other eligible public entities seeking infrastructures funding to support economic development, job creation, and/or housing, and whereas the MassWorks infrastructure program provides public infrastructure grants for infrastructure in the public way, including but not limited to water and sewer mains, utility extensions, roads, curb cuts, parking facilities, site preparation, sidewalks to support projects that lead to economic development and housing creation. And whereas the town of Charlton has an opportunity to move forward with long-anticipated installation of a water main along Route 20 from the vicinity of Bay Path Road, Charlton eastward, to join with an existing water main on Route 20 near Pioneer Drive, Oxford, with water to be provided by the town of Oxford water provider. And whereas the Charlton Water and Sewer Commission, other Charlton municipal bodies in the town of Oxford are in support of the proposed project and application. And whereas in conjunction with the Route 20 Safety Improvement Project planned for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation for final design and construction beginning in 2019, the proposed MassWorks fundraiser water main project will greatly enhance opportunities for economic development on a portion of Route 20 that is designated as a priority development area in the regional planning. And whereas, if awarded, the MassWorks grant program will reimburse the town of Charlton for costs associated with the proposed project up to the full amount of the grant award. Now therefore be it resolved that the town administrator and/or as a designated representative is hereby authorized to file and accept a 2017 MassWorks grant with and from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to install a water main on Route 20, Eastern Charlton and Western Oxford, and that the town administrator or designated representative is hereby authorized to take such actions as are necessary to carry out the terms, conditions, and purposes of the proposed grant award.
Second.
Second.
Motion is second, a great motion because it has a lot of great stuff in it. Is there any discussion on the motion? Mr. Swenson?
I'm not sure if this should go with the grant application or something that should be done separately, but in the meeting with the Lieutenant Governor, she asked about if we knew of any economic development projects or commercial development projects along that section of Route 20. So I was thinking it would be very helpful if we could work with the EDC, and if there are any that they could let us know about, that we could get that information. Again, I don't know if it's appropriate to go in with the grant application, but if not, at least get that information to the Lieutenant Governor's office, because she said that would be very helpful in getting grants through.
If I may respond, that's true, and we have been working with the planning board. Alan Gordon is assisting Andrew in putting together the package. He is out on vacation, I believe, this week, so when he gets back, I believe he's spoken with 3 property owners on Route 20. I spoke with one of them, who would not be advantageous, but I believe Mr. Gordon has already approached someone, and he'll finalize that on Monday when he gets back.
Great.
So,
Thank
yes.
Any other discussion on the motion? I'd like to thank you and your office for working on this. This is just a huge opportunity for a lot of development for, inexpensive money.
And thank you to the selectmen who showed up to greet the Lieutenant Governor and spoke to her about how important this project is. And for people at home who may have caught bits and pieces about this project, what the project will do is a portion of Route 20 will be reconstructed in the next 2 years, and what we're trying to do is to make sure that we can put water infrastructure. We have the Charlton water system goes just so far down Route 20. We're now trying to connect to the Oxford system so that we'll be able to get water down in that area in front of Quartercake Pub and O'Malley's and those there. So it's an important project to the town.
A prime area for development.
It's important to get that in before the road's done, so you don't have to do the road and then tear up all your new work and do it again.
Well, Mass Highway will not let you go into it for
If they
at
know the
least 5
project's coming.
years.
Oh,
If
so
for
you gotta
5
get it
years,
in.
you can't. So if we had an owner that wanted to develop his or her land, they would be prohibited for 5 years before they could actually get water.
So you gotta
So.
get it in.
I have one last thing. This is probably just as much event as anything else. It's been observed that for years we have contamination on the east side of town caused by the state salt shed. We have contamination in the central portion of town that the state is at least partially culpable in with the Mass Turnpike incidents. And we have contamination in the western side of town that the state is culpable, has responsibility in at the junction of 20 and 49 and those condos that are up in there. So it's nice to see that the Lieutenant Governor was here and stepped up and her office and the DOT really seem to be generally concerned and working with us to make this right. So it's very encouraging.
So you could have just said we have contamination everywhere.
Well,
It's not too far off. Mr. McGrath?
Through the chair.
You didn't say no.
One of the things that the DOT is doing now is they're monitoring closely the amount of salt that is put out on the roadways. Especially with the water that we have in Charlton, the salt tends to bring out the iron and the calcium in the water. And that's, I believe, what happened over at the Quarter Keg Pub and pretty much anywhere you go along Route 20 or the Turnpike. There, for years and years, I-90 has blasted out a lot of salt, and they've really put the clamp down on how much they can put out.
So it means they'd be storing how many tons of salt and just goes out there.
Yeah.
Staggering. But is there any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you again for everyone involved with that.
Thank you. And I had stepped out just to get the clerk. We're going to need that certified, so we'll take care of that in the morning
Perfect, thank you very much.
from her on that.
We will now move to our first scheduled appointment at 6:45 at James. I will read the memo. Goes to it. Jim Foberg, the health inspector, and Ann Salou, animal control officer and animal inspector, have asked to be placed on the agenda to announce a grant that they received. We have scheduled them for a 6:45 p.m. appointment, and they asked them to please come on up.
Good evening. I just appreciate your time. I just wanted to know, let the selectmen know and everyone that we did receive a grant through the Mass Department of Public Health through the FEP funding, which I'm the executive member through the board. I represent the town of Charlton, which allows us to get money through the CDC, which is given Mass Department of Public Health for funding for our emergency preparedness sites set up for in case you take, what they do is they take pressure off the hospital. If we need to set up a emergency site where we need to do vaccinations or whatever, that relieves some of the pressure on the town to not provide funding. The funding is through that grant. So in looking at that, they decided that it was important for animals to also be housed and protected. So they gave a grant, which is about $3,000. I can see pictures that I can give to you that. We received 5 cages, large cages, 2 iPads, which I gave one to the town administrator and one for myself. If we set up a site, we'll have internet access wherever we are. 2 Incipio Fridays, which I don't know what they are, but you can tell.
What was that?
Which, that whole kit with the animal stuff in it, with the protective gloves, a pet kit, 5 small crates, 5 medium crates, and 5 large crates to house animals that would be brought in. A lot of people are not gonna leave their dogs or their animals, and we would have somewhere. And I did take some pictures of it, and we can show you that. But I just wanted to let everyone know that this is, it would help the town, help Ann, who had an old pair of gloves, and she was very happy to receive all these items that would help her house animals for the town of Charlton. She does a great job, and I think this would help her in the performance of her job at no cost to the town through the Board of Health. So,
That's great news.
Mr. Swanson?
I'm just curious, who actually wrote the grant?
I did.
Thank you. Then thank you for that. It's, as budgets are tighter and tighter, it's really appreciated when people seek out grant money. So thank you for that.
One request to ask you to work with the Selectmen's Office to get that on our website. I would love people to see, this awesome windfall for us, so.
Yeah, and when the funding's there, I think it's important that we keep on top of any department trying to get funding to relieve the town, a municipality of any kind of, it's very expensive, and, $3,000 is not a lot of money, but Ann could use these cages, and I'm sure that it's great. She was smiling, as you can see in this picture. So,
Mr. Mr. Swenson?
Just two other quick things if I could. 3,000 may not seem like a lot of money, but that's the type of program, when it gets to budget season, we're looking where we can save $1 here and $1 there. Those are the unfortunately, those are the kinds of things that tend to take the hit, so it's really great that they came through in a grant, you're able to do that. And just the other thing I'd like to mention is that some time ago, we had a dog hearing here, and it was one of the most emotional discussions and votes I've seen in all my years on the board. And the dog, the owner of the dog has since pursued it further. And I would just like to recognize and thank Ms. Salou. She's handled it extremely professionally and with great compassion to the dog owners and everyone else involved in it. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely, it's still.
It's still ongoing, but
so-
while you were here, I just wanted to thank you for that.
Absolutely. Any more discussion? Thank you again, we really
Thank you
appreciate
for your
it.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Now move on to our 6:50 appointment with Bill Reed of the Last Green Valley. Ms. Craven?
Yes, sir, I have invited Bill Reed from the Last Green Valley to attend tonight's meeting. When the National Heritage Corridor was first designated, it was called the Quinnebog-Shintucket Rivers National Heritage Corridor. A plaque with that name was given to the town and is hanging in the main entrance of the town hall. By an act of U.S. Congress, the name was changed to Last Green Valley National Heritage Corridor. Mr. Reed is here tonight to present the new plaque to the town.
Look at that, Mr. Reed, please take it away.
Thank you very, very much. I'd also like to take a few minutes to give you a bit of a report on what we've been up to. First of all, to make sure that you know that the town of Charlton, your town of Charlton, is one of 35 towns that are within the National Heritage Corridor. You're one of our 9 towns. The 9 towns stretch from North Oxford to Brimfield, pretty much down Route 20. And there are 26 Connecticut towns going all the way down the Rhode Island border to Norwich, and then circling back up through Lebanon and up the I-85, 84 up to Union. All of those towns represent an area that is still 77% undeveloped land and is very unique amongst the I-95 corridor from Washington to Boston. And this is why the Last Green Valley was designated, because where we live is very unique, because the rest of the corridor, I-95 corridor from Boston to Washington, is pretty much developed land. And any look at a satellite image of the East Coast will tell you that. We are dark at night and green during the day. And so that's why this area, 1,000 square miles, 700,000 acres, basically within the Thames River watershed basin, right? All the water, surface water that flows out to Long Island Sound goes out through the Thames River, and that's why the watershed's called the Thames. So you're in the Thames watershed whether you know it or not. Let me tell you a little bit about the things that we've been doing. For a number of years, we've had a wonderful program called Walktober. It started as Walking Weekend, then Walking Weekends, and it was so popular that we took over the entire month. This past year, we had over 270 free volunteer-led walks, hikes, paddles, and experiences, as well as several other events that we publicized through our Walktober brochure and our online website. More than 65,000 people attended those walks and events, and so it's a huge opportunity for these towns to participate in that, and there have been walks in Charlton. Last year, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers down in Buffinville they do all sorts of great programs down there, and so they did it again last year, and they're doing it again this year. The 216 program is just now in development. We hope to have the brochure ready to go in another few weeks. We try to get them out in mid-August if we can, or late August. And yes, we will be putting them in the library and here at the town hall. Because it's such a popular program, we decided we'd take over the spring months also with a program called Spring Outdoors. We've done it for 2 years in a row now, and it runs from the vernal equinox to the summer solstice. And we've had on average about 150 free volunteer-led walks and hikes during that program also. I want to draw your attention to a guide that's probably still some out here. They're also in the library. This is our Explore Guide. The Explore Guide comes out new every year. If you're looking for something to do, and this is a great way to attract people to this region, is with this guide. Everything you could possibly want to do is in here. State parks, hiking, paddling, all sorts of great information is available in the Explore Guide. And we have volunteers making sure that they're available in different town halls and in libraries, and there's a bunch of them there already. I also wanted to let you know that the Last Green Valley as your National Heritage Corridor, we'd be happy to supply you with letters of support if you are working on municipal projects that advance our management plan, including any work on brownfields redevelopment projects, open space acquisition, trails work, streetscape improvements, land use planning, historic preservation projects. If you're looking for your National Heritage Corridor, which we're underneath the umbrella of the National Park Service, you think that would help advance some of the projects that you're working on, we'd be happy to do that. Our executive director does this a lot. Give her more than 24 hours notice for that sort of thing. That would be great. We also have a variety of different projects that we work on through our budget. We do fund cleanups, up to $500 reimbursable for cleanup projects. I think we funded projects here in the past, but take advantage of that. It's a great way to get your scouts involved, community is involved. And we have participated up here on Earth Day. I think the last 2 or 3 years we've had our booth up here for your great Earth Day festival. We also have historic preservation grants. Those can be up to $2,500. If there's a historical site here in town that's got a project they could like to get some funding for, check us out on our website for that. There is still a little bit of money left this year. We've done a lot of publicity on it, but we certainly would love to get some money up here into the town of Charlton. Some of the projects that we also do, you're talking about water recently, well, we do a very active water quality monitoring program. We do water quality monitoring on rivers and streams and lakes. It's more than 10 years. We've got 70 volunteers. The data that they collect gets fed back to the states of Connecticut and Massachusetts following their scientist protocols. We have worked closely with a number of groups, the French River Connection, Webster Lake Association, South Charlton Reservoir Association, and Amos Lake Association, Preston, doing water quality monitoring. We have a volunteer coordinator, Jean Pillow, who works on that. Paddle recreation is a great opportunity to experience the last Green Valley. I thought I had paddle guides here, but I don't have any paddle guides here. But all the paddling locations are in the Explore Guide. We've got a new guide out that has all of the legal public launch locations on the Quinnebog, the Willimantic, and the Shetucket rivers. Great opportunities. We also put up information kiosks on all those locations. In addition to that, each of those 3 rivers has been designated as a national recreational trail by the Department of Interior. Some of the only rivers so designated east of the Mississippi, and we're happy to do that. Now, I serve the Last Green Valley as the chief ranger, and I coordinate the work of about 30 volunteer rangers. And we love to do informational talks to groups, community groups, line clubs, libraries, and the like. And we also go to a lot of events. We'll be at about 80 events this year, of course, including your event back on Earth Day. I'd love to be able to get to your old home day around Labor Day weekend. Just so you know, I'm also at the Woodstock Fair for those 4 days. But if I can free up a ranger to get up here, I'd love to do that, and I know the folks to talk to about that. One of the biggest projects that we've recently been awarded is a partnership with 19 other organizations and agencies. It's a 5-year Natural Resources Conservation Service grant project. It's a $6.1 million project over 5 years to engage our region's forest landowners to help develop bird wildlife habitat assessments, forest management plans, good forest stewardship projects, as well as forest preservation. There's 2 or 3 different Natural Resources Conservation Service funding areas that we're working through, one of them being the Healthy Forest Reserve Program. So if there are forest landowners in this area that are interested in that sort of thing, we'll be going public with that in the next, hopefully the next month or so. We work closely with Opacum Land Trust and an outfit called MassCon, which is a Massachusetts-Connecticut forest partnership, as well as several other state agencies. We'll be working with Mass Audubon on the bird assessment program. So it's a great opportunity for looking at some specific forest preservation and working with forest landowners. If there's any questions, I'd entertain them now. If not, be happy to present you with a brand-new plaque that you can hang it wherever you would so desire. And I've also got materials to share with you, our maps, our Explorer guides, and our biannual report.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. McGrath?
Through the chair, as Bill has stated, they have been a great partner with the town of Charlton, especially through the planning board, the Charlton Heritage Preservation Trust. They were a very big partner in the Fay Mountain farm purchase. They wrote a letter of recommendation for that. they've helped us with certain tasks on when we've been designating open space in a lot of the subdivisions and stuff. So I can't say enough about the good work that they've done for us. They're usually behind the scenes, people don't know that they're there, but we at the planning board were very, very thankful to have all the help in the letters that were written on behalf
Well,
of us.
we're glad to help. Charlton is one of our bigger towns in that last Green Valley. It's one of our more important towns. It's certainly in the crossroads to this region also. So we're glad to do as much as we can up here.
Any more questions or comments?
I just have to do this one quick one. I just want to say kudos to whoever came up with the name for the French River connection.
Up the French River. They have literally pulled tons and tons, whole cars out of that river. You know, the joke when you were kids, that you stick your finger in the French River and up comes a bone. Well, it's a lot cleaner now, and it's due to a lot of volunteer efforts of some really special people in this region. So.
Absolutely. Mr. Singer?
Yeah, no, I mean, he answered part of my question was, do we have copies of the materials? I'd like to see them. And the other part
Yeah.
was, if you don't have all of them, where can people from Charlton, do we have plenty of those in paddle guides at the library or the? or
You
the
can
mall?
access everything off our website, and I do urge, the viewers here and you to take a look at our website, because it really explains a lot of what's going on. We're always looking for more representation on our boards. We try to make sure that board representation for Massachusetts towns is equal to Connecticut towns. We've got a lot of committees, great opportunities. But yes, the Explore Guide and the Walktober guides will be up here. We charge a little bit for the paddle guide because we gave away so many for free for so many years at a few bucks. But you can get those through us. But so you know also, everything that's in the paddle guide is also in here. And this
people
is
can
free.
access that. Can they access everything in each piece online?
Yes, all of these are available online. The Explore Guide is also online, and of course, with a lot of the locations that are in the Explore Guide, you have a hot link. And so you can go right to their website or right to the state websites for their parks and the like. Again, these are available. We try to make sure that they get up here whenever they need to be replenished. We have volunteers to do that. So definitely the Explore Guide and Walktober and the map. We try to make sure that they're up at the library.
Awesome. Any more discussion?
I'd just like to add, thank you, Bill, for coming.
Yeah.
And I have used your guides, and I've gone on some of the paddles, and they've been just excellent experiences. The people that participate are very friendly, and it's easy to join in. So I
Yeah.
would give a shout out to anybody that's watching this to come down, grab one, and try it out, because it's a good group, it's a good thing to do.
And
And for family.
we really took paddling very seriously. And the reason is that there's a lot of groups throughout the region that do hiking. There's a lot of land trusts, a lot of hiking. No one was really doing paddle recreation, let alone water quality monitoring such a large scale. So I like to tell people that we sort of planted our flag in water. If you want to paddle in this region, call me. I'll find out I'll tell you where to go. I'll tell you where there's good water. I'll tell you where the gauges are and how to find out. Believe me, just give me a call. I get lots of calls about it. I've paddled it all the way to Long Island Sound.
We go every
Wow.
weekend.
You do? I
I'm
wish I
starting to
could.
see something starting
Apparently I-
from here and down.
We have what we call the sunset paddle, we'll go
Oh,
somewhere,
those are great, yeah.
Quinnebog, Willimantic, we'll hit one river like every weekend.
David
So thank
Singer,
you.
I'll remember that name.
So if you see me out there dragging a kayak or a canoe, you'll know.
Well, the water's up this summer, so take advantage of it. I'm going to leave these
Thank you.
up here on the table for you.
Perfect.
Yeah,
All right.
Can we get a picture
Yeah,
of you
absolutely.
guys?
And,
Would be-
I would be honored to receive the plaque, Mr. Reed.
Somewhere in town, there's one that says, "Welcome to the Quinnebog and Chautauqua Rivers Valley's National Heritage Corridor." This one has holes in it, so you can, do first selectman? Yes. I thought so, that's where you're doing all the talking.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, who can do cameras? Because we need to have a girl in this picture. We just- Thank you.
This could cost us if not taken.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll leave it here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. very much. And with that, we'll move on to our 7 o'clock appointment with John O'Rourke with the Good Energy. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. I've invited John O'Rourke from Good Energy to give an update on the electricity aggregation for the town of Charlton. As you know, the town entered into an agreement with Good Energy to find an electricity supplier for Charlton residents who do not have a current supplier. As a competitive bid process, Public Power LLC was selected as our electricity supplier with a contract term from July 2017 to December 2019. Letters have been sent to residents advising them of the supplier effective July 1st, 2017. If they wish to opt out of the program, they need to sign and date the opt-out card and mail it back. Very simple. Before he begins, I do want to just take a moment to remind people of the timeline, because we have had quite a few residents upset about being notified that they were being moved off of National Grid onto a carrier that they didn't choose. And we've been very patiently explaining that this had gone to town meeting and that there's been public hearings. So just a quick update on the timeline of events, which was in October in 2014, we went to special town meeting, and there was a resolution to seek lower electric rates in a competitive market through the Hampshire Council of Governments, and to authorize the board or the TA to sign any contracts and other instruments needed or advisable to effectuate that. So in 2014, the town meeting decided that they wanted to aggregate the electrical rates. In November of 2015, the Department of Utilities denied the HCOG's application on behalf of the town of Charlton for deficiencies, and we were told to find another company. In December 2015, we did an advertisement, and that advertisement was scheduled for January 5th. The advertisement was on the town website and the town's cable channel. In January of 2016, there was a public hearing on the municipal aggregation. Documents for the plan was on file with the clerk's office since December 1st, 2015, and they were also in the library in December 2015. The hearing was to hear comments by citizens. John was here at that meeting. It was in attendance, and we answered questions. In January 2017, the Department of Utilities approved the town for municipal aggregation. In February 2016, the Board of Selectmen approved the contract with Good Energy. In May 2017, a pre-bid pricing presentation in Millbury for the 3-town group. So we did this on a regional basis with Millbury and Oxford. And then electric service agreement was signed between the town of Charlton and Public Power. In June 9th, letters began arriving in mailboxes on that weekend. So that was the timeline. John is here to talk a little bit about the program, answer any questions. My hope is that the residents who had concerns, were able to attend to tonight.
Mr. Singer?
I have one question. I was asked by some people that said they never got the letter.
Can
So
you
why
talk
would
about the
some
letter
people
and how?
Right, why
Who
would
got
people
it?
have
Some
not-
people did not receive
Right,
letters.
why would
If-
they have not received it?
If
Okay,
they
Mr.
did,
O'Rourke?
if they had a contract already, they were not on the open market. So this option was only available to people who were on the open market with National Grid that did not have a contract.
So all those residents who had already gotten
If
an
they had
alternate provider,
Viridian or something else, yes.
were not included in this, did not get a
Correct.
letter, and were not moved to this.
Correct.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ms. Craver. You stole a lot of my thunder, but
I'm sorry.
let me go into part of the timeline and go over a couple of things that you had also mentioned. As you know, the DPU issued an order approving your plan on January 27th of this year. We were fully expecting that to be last November, but there were some new people at DPU, and there was a heavy workload, so that got delayed a bit. So it was approved January 27th. We issued an RFP for Charlton, Millbury, and Oxford on April the 26th, 2017. We got indicative pricing up to bid day on May 17th. and Charlton, Millbury, and Oxford accepted a bid on that day. Customer notification letters, I have a supersized copy of the letter here, souvenir for you, went out on June 6th. And essentially, the opt-out period starts 3 days after that to allow mail to get to residents. So June 9th started the opt-out period. Under the law, there's an initial 30-day opt-out period where you go through a process where the residents have a choice. They have the letter in hand. They make a decision whether they want to stay in the aggregation or opt out of the aggregation. In this case, all they had to do was opt out of the aggregation, was to send in a card. That card goes to the competitive supplier, so that at the end of that 30-day period, anybody who has given them a card is taken off the list and not included in the aggregation. So that period ended July 9th. And as of the meter read date in July, of everybody who did not opt out, everybody who was in the aggregation, would be switched over to public power at a lower rate than National Grid. Throughout the opt-out period, Kara Himlowski and I coordinated. There were some people who got the letter, threw the letter out, then decided they wanted to opt out. They didn't have an opt-out card, so we instructed them as to how to do that. We had a total of a dozen or 15 calls, most of which were, I threw the letter out, I need to know what to do. There were a couple of interesting calls from Charlton residents who were wondering why they didn't get the letter. Now, the letter only goes out to basic service customers of National Grid. There were people who didn't get the letter and wondered why, because they thought they were with National Grid. And it's easy to mistake that because you're getting a bill from National Grid. So people don't understand that if they have a different supplier, there's only one place on the bill that shows up, and it's under the supplier name. As I said, I had 2 conversations with Charlton residents who thought they should have gotten the letter. I asked them to look at their bills. I asked them to look at the supplier, and they realized it was not National Grid, it was a different supplier. And unfortunately, both those people were paying 16.4 cents per kilowatt hour. So sometime in the past, they had perhaps given their account number out to someone on the phone and got switched over to another supplier at a rate that was significantly higher than it should have been. So those people were alerted and given the information to come into the aggregation. So that's essentially how it's gone. I think the whole period went very smoothly. As I say, I coordinated with Kara. She did a great job giving me, forwarding me emails from people and phone calls. And as I say, we maybe had a dozen or maybe 15 calls to help people out. Everything else ran pretty smoothly.
Thank you. Mr. Singer?
Just a quick question. It looks like for July 17 to December, for residential, it's hard to read this, is about approximately 9.5 cents. And then next year's 10.5, or sorry, around 10 cents. Then the third column, which I think, if I can read it, it's a bad copy, the current National Grid, but it's so smeared on our screens, we can't read what the rate is. Do you have that in your paper?
Yeah, the first column is 9,333,666. All right, that's the rate of the aggregation, okay? Because we went out to bid at this time of the year and we wanted to get under the National Grid rate,
Yep.
we did a step, so it's lower than the National Grid rate, which in the right column is 9,432, okay?
Yeah, that's what we can't read. You can't see our screens, it's just like black.
He has it right in front of him, actually.
Oh, look at that.
There, that's better.
There we go.
There we go. That's better.
So that's your souvenir. Essentially, it will go up to 10/1/30 as of January 2018. And our analysts expect the rate for National Grid to be over 11 cents for that period. So,
So what happens if you have a Charlton resident who didn't get the letter? They have an alternate supplier already.
yeah,
They learn about this through a neighbor or someone who wants to get out because they got the letter, and they want to switch from their alternate provider to be part of the aggregation. Can they do that?
okay.
And if they
We-
can, how do they do that?
We don't encourage anyone to break a contract if they're with a third-party supplier.
Some of them have no,
Some of them have no termination fee, and they've been on it for a long time. So in that case, if there's no termination fee, they can just call up Public Power and say, I want to be switched from ABC Electric to the aggregation, and they'll arrange that to be done on their next meter read.
so they would say to the aggregation of the town of Charlton?
Yes, yeah.
Information, Ms. Graver?
So one of the most common questions we had was, why do we have to opt out? Why couldn't we just opt in? So we need to think about exactly what actually happened. So it was town meeting, which makes decisions for the town, and its town business had chosen. So it was the equivalent of all of the residents of Charlton saying, we want to aggregate. So when we went out to bid, you would get a better bid if the whole town went in and people had to opt out. They could guess that maybe 20% might opt out. But if you did it in the reverse for the purposes of bidding, they probably would say, well, maybe 20% might opt in. So we got a better rate by doing it that way, but also the town made the decision at town meeting, and therefore the opt-out was appropriate rather than the opt-in.
Yeah, if I could just elaborate on that. The law for Massachusetts was the first municipal aggregation law in the country. It was authored by Stanley Rosenberg, who's the Senate president. Within any municipality. So that's why it goes through the town government, even though it's just for the residents and businesses of a town. The reason it is an opt-out is because that is the best way to build the largest buying group. You build the largest buying group, you get a better offer for your electric. If it was an opt-in, you wouldn't have that many people in the program. And it's an easy opt-out, and it's a no penalty, no termination fee opt-out. So that was the reason why the law was written the way it is. Every other law in the country that has been successful has been modeled on the Massachusetts law, which is an opt-out law. And every other one is like that as well.
This was also looked in by the Department of Public Utilities, so it's not like it was unchecked with something else.
Oh, exactly. This goes through,
It's rigorous.
the plans go through a very rigorous consultation process with the Department of Energy Resources and an approval process with the Department of Public Utilities. And again, sometimes this takes a long time because they go over these plans very carefully. They want to make sure that the residents are protected under the plans, and everything is done according to the law. And that's the way we do it.
And the last comment, I think I read in the newspaper, and I was just trying to find it on my phone, but I can't quite bring it up, that the AG, Maura Healy, is actually submitting paperwork. National Grid wants a huge rate increase, and she is trying to fight that at this point. And one of the reasons that we did this was because there are electric generators that are going offline, and we're anticipating that the prices may go up. So we were trying to create a stabilized rate for our residents for 3 years.
Mr. McGrath?
Just as another aside to that, right now, the electric company's lobbyists are going after solar power. What they want to do is they want to change the rate at what they have to pay the solar generators for their electricity. That could have great implications on what happens to us. Because what we receive in tax revenue from those solar farms that don't use any public services at all is great money for the town of Charlton, and we've done very well with them. It also, if you have solar power on your roofs and you're feeding back into the system, they're paying you at a rate now that they want to change to be like pennies you'll be getting a check for. So what you want to do is you want to keep an eye on this, folks. You want to contact your state legislators and make sure that the lobbyists do not get their way on this. They've been doing this all over the country. I don't believe the state legislature is in favor of doing this because the state also receives money from solar power, as you can see going up and down I-90 and other state-owned land. So it would be cutting their own throat also. But you want to really keep your eye on this.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? Request, Ms. Kramer, can we make sure this document is published on our website?
Yes. We're actually have on our website a place where we have our own web page for electricity aggregation and all that information is there already.
Perfect.
We'll see.
Seeing no other further discussion, Mr. O'Rourke, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming out. And
Thank you
for
very much.
your
Thank you.
comments.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You take care. And with that, we'll move to our 7:15 appointment for 508 LLC. Ms. Kramer?
Yes, sir. At the board's June 13th, 2017 meeting, the board discussed with Mr. Jennings from 508 LLC violations of the stipulations placed on the special liquor license and the request for live entertainment to be used on July 1st and 2nd of 2017. For the liquor license violations and as directed and voted by the board, a letter of written warning was sent to 508 Beverage LLC that the violations they had on the aforementioned dates of the special license are unacceptable, and if there continues to be a problem, there will be harsher repercussions. The special license was also updated with the addition of the stipulation that Ladd Road access is restricted to use by municipal emergency vehicles or mutual aid summoned to the location. Further, unless emergency services or law enforcement agencies direct, all other vehicular traffic is not allowed to enter or exit the venue using Ladd Road. For the live entertainment public hearing, the request was approved for July 1st and 2nd for 2017 with the following conditions: that the Board of Health be consulted for any regulations and requirements relating to the provision of sanitary facilities for the events. 2, before a stage, light, towers, speaker towers, stage covering, canopy, or the like be erected, the building commissioner be shown plans for and consulted on the erection of same, and any necessary building permit be obtained. Number 3 was no activity at any of the events listed, including the use, operation of, racing of engine-propelled on or off-road vehicles such as motorbikes, ATVs, two or four-wheel drive vehicles, in a manner not associated with transportation of people to and from the site, will be allowed until the conditions of the planning board site plan approval decision letter dated August 12, 2015, are complied with, and the building inspector, ZEO, has issued, at a minimum, a temporary certificate of compliance for the project. Number 4 was no parking is allowed on Brookfield Road. And 5, Ladd Road access is restricted to use by municipal emergency vehicles or mutual aid summoned to the location. Further, unless emergency services or law enforcement agencies direct, all other vehicle traffic is not allowed to enter or exit the venue using Ladd Road. I was asked to report back to the board after the event took place with any information and complaints from the fire chief, police chief, and building commissioner. All have reported no issues or complaints. After the meeting on June 13th, the following items were received. 1, there was an email from Eric Lavalley of Sturbridge, Mass. Dated June 16th regarding a complaint he submitted to the Sturbridge Inspectional Services Department regarding street signs that have been erected on Route 49 in Sturbridge to avoid paid parking for Spartan Race event taking place in Rutland on 6, 17, and 18. 2, an email from Ann Geyer dated June 19th regarding traffic problems from the parking for the Spartan Race. 3, an email from Laura McHugh of Sturbridge regarding the use of Ladd Road for the Spartan race. 4, I included an email from myself dated June 19th that was sent to the Building, Planning, Board of Health, and Police regarding the event for the Spartan race that I received from Leon Gamon, the Sturbridge Town Manager. Notice from the Building Commissioner, Meskis, dated June 20th, issuing a cease and desist to 508 International, Sunset City and associated businesses. Email from the Town Planner, Alan Gordon, dated June 20th, regarding the Planning Board's role and jurisdiction in the site plan application review process. He states that none of the event activities or the regional parking lot activity are related to the site plan permit process. Complaint from Bob Burnell, dated June 21, regarding the violation of the use of Ladd Road per site plan approval, dated 8/13/15. And number 8, Graves Field inspection report, dated June 22nd. An update from the Planning Board on the site plan application. There are 4 items remaining for the site plan permit field construction. The Planning Board continued this item until their August 9th meeting to continue review discussion on the ongoing site work, completion status, and letters from Russ Jennings granting permission for Pete Boyer and Amber Howard to act as agents for Sunset City Incorporated, 508 International LLC, 508 BoS LLC. They have submitted several requests for one-day liquor licenses, which are being worked on by the building commissioner, and he will forward to our office with his recommendation. We will add those requests to your next meeting on August 15, providing we have received approval of all departments as your policy states. For informational purposes, we have verified with the ABCC that the days the licenses are issued count toward the total of 30 requests they are allowed. The following have been issued to date. April 22nd, dates of issue were from April 21st to 23. Those were 3 days. May 6th and 7th, dates were issued from May 5th to May 8th, which was 4 days. May 20th and 21, dates of issues were May 19th through 22. That's 4 days. June 11th and 10 and 11, dates of issue were June 9th through 12th, which were 4 days. And July 1 and 2, dates of issue were June 30th to July 3rd, which was 4 days, bringing the total to 19 days for the events. They are allowed up to 11 days more, only if approved by the Board of Selectmen. I put this in just to clarify, because at one point, I think that they had asked us whether or not the 3 days actually were 3 days of the 30, or if it was still just 1 day. And I was told that it is actually 3 days, and that is the 3-day license, and that's what they're recommending. So the events that people are allowed to have really is 10 a year.
And according to my calculations, that would be 3 more events with the recommended day before and after.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. I will open this up for discussion. Just want to remind everyone a couple of things. One, please make sure all comments are courteous and to the point and stay on topic. Once again, there are no licenses being considered by the Board of Selectmen tonight. And our October 15th looks like we'll be taking up potentially some applications, but once again tonight, there's nothing that will be discussed regarding that. We will also be discussing the previous license for July 1st and 2nd. So I will open up for discussion from the board and from everyone else. Nothing? Is there anyone here for discussion? Ma'am, please come up and please state your name into the microphone and your address for the record.
Thanks for giving me time to speak. My name is Emily Smeltzer. I've lived at 270 Brookfield Road for 49 years. Those who know me know I'm a quiet person and I don't enjoy speaking in public, so I'm out of my comfort zone. But I felt I needed to speak up about the massive traffic jam that Mr. Jennings, Mr. Salou, and 508 International created on June 17th and 18th by renting their facility as a public parking lot to shuttle participants to the Spartan event in Rutland. They asked for no permit for this activity, nor saw fit to notify the police of the amount of traffic that this would generate. This land use was a violation of zoning bylaw, and they were not permitted properly by the Board of Selectmen. Charlton Fire Department also was not notified. When I called the police, they didn't even know what was going on. I have to say that the traffic going past my house was the worst I have seen in 49 years of living on this road. The number of cars and buses traveling to and from Route 49 past my house to the 508 International entrance that weekend was unbelievable. This certainly was not part of the Sunset City Site Plan Review traffic study. Even worse was at the end of the Spartan event in Rutland when the buses returned and cars left the site. The buses were speeding, just flying down the road to go home. I had plans that Saturday, but ended up canceling them. It was just not worth trying to leave my driveway. Those plans that weekend could be changed, but what worried me was that I have required the ambulance service several times lately, and since February 2014, I have been rushed to the ER over 20 times. My neighbors, the Cardinals, Mr. Jezerski, and my young neighbor Kyle Brodeur all have required the ambulance. An ambulance would have had difficulty reaching our homes if needed, and they may not have made it on time coming or going. As a tax-paying resident, I find this totally unacceptable. Friends of mine on Jennings Drive could not exit their street because of the traffic. This is a dead-end road, and so they were basically trapped. Another friend lives on the corner of Brookfield Road and Jennings Drive, and he had an accident and needed to get to the hospital. Fortunately, this happened on Friday, the day before. One day later, on Saturday, he would have had difficulty getting the help he needed. 508 was aware that Ladd Road was only to be used as an emergency exit when they had events. Totally disregarding this, 508 erected signs on Route 49 which stated, "Turn here for 508 International Parking, directing vehicles to enter Ladd Road." Hundreds of buses and cars entered this narrow country road starting at 4:30 a.m. When Mass DOT was notified about these signs, they removed them. Such signs are not legal on a state highway, but totally disregarding this, 508 International put the signs back up on Saturday and Sunday. Apparently, 508 International has a disregard for rules and regulations. Since their grand opening in April, they have operated like rules do not apply to them. What's your board going to do about this? 508 International had 2 violations for alcohol, and they installed their entrance without a building permit. As I stated, I've resided here since 1968. I've never seen our town government run so ineffectively. One board doesn't know what the other board is doing, and no one enforces policy. It's not only an embarrassment, but it's affecting the quality of life of residents. I repeat, what's your board going to do about it?
Thank you, Ms. Meltzer.
Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for coming forward.
Can we get a copy of
Yeah.
that?
Would you
Ms. Meltzer?
submit that?
Yep.
Can we have a
Please,
copy of
submit
that?
to the board for our meeting minutes.
Can we,
Pardon me?
can we have a
submit that to
copy
the
of
board,
that?
please?
I
Can-
didn't hear.
Can we keep your
Can you get
letter?
Your thing you read off of.
You want this?
Sure.
Then we can put it in the
Errors and
file.
all.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
We're gonna check it for grammar and spelling.
Oh,
Ms. Craver,
I didn't put spell check.
a question about the June 17th and June 18th event. I believe that event does not fall under the purview of the Board of Selectmen, as it wasn't an entertainment, there's no alcohol served, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I know that the police chief is aware of this happening. I find it very puzzling why no one would contact the police chief when there's a large increase of traffic, especially that high volume in such a short time. That is a public safety concern, and I'm almost stunned why no one reached out to the police to let them know what's going on to help, manage that. So, Mr. McGrath?
Through the chair, I believe that the building commissioner issued a cease and desist for this type of operation there because it doesn't meet the planning board, what was approved by the planning board. I also have talked with the developer about what the issues were there. Russ, do you want to expand on it, or would you rather me talk about it?
No, you can feel
Mr.
free to.
Jennings, can you please state your
go
name
on.
and then address for the record, please?
Sure. Russell Jennings, 39 Hammond Hill Road, Charlton, Mass.
So correct me if I'm, where I make mistakes, but what they did was they had a group that runs a Spartan race up at Treasure Valley who had a last-minute problem with their fields of parking and moving their participants in due to a large amount of rain. They came and asked, they were looking around to see who had large tracts of land that had a parking access, and 508's name came up. They said they would take care of everything, including notifying the police department and ordering the detail officers. So what happened after that was they found out that there was a problem on the road. And they showed up. Russell said to him, have you contacted the police department? And they said, well, no. So Russell contacted the police department, and the police department sent down details. How long did it take them to get details there?
They were there right around noontime on Saturday. And then we also set it up for Sunday, so
Yeah.
that,
The first thing they tried to do was coach the people on how to run the parking lot. And after 2 attempts at that failed, they ended up taking it over themselves, which they weren't even on the game plan on that. I think when they've run their events, we haven't had any traffic or parking problems over there, except for the use of Ladd Road, which we've corrected. That's not in their permits to use Ladd Road, and we have taken care of that.
So Mr. Graff, question on that timeline. So when did they figure out, so the rain date for the event, the original parking location?
It wasn't a rain date, it was, the case was, they had the event scheduled, and then we ended up having a tremendous amount of rain that week.
Yeah.
And their parking lots ended up being inundated, and that's when they approached these
So
people.
how many days' notice did they come out to reach you and say, was it 3 days, 2 days, the day before?
no, it was
saying
about, I think it was about 10 days.
10 days?
Yep.
Mr. Singer?
So just 2 points. One, 10 days should be ample time to notify police departments and everybody else, so there shouldn't have been a lapse from that regard. And then the cease and desist then addressed basically what that letter was.
Correct.
The complaint, the cease and desist addresses that.
So, one thing that bothers me, I can't really say it another way, so you're a 10-day notice for this event, which would put it at the 7th that you would know about, that you were planning this event, and you came to our board on June 13th to discuss prior violations and to talk about your live entertainment license for July 1st and 2nd. You were very amenable, saying, oh, absolutely, prevent access, restrict access to Ladd Road as part of that event. But you
That's
remained
right.
completely quiet about this upcoming event and then blindsided our town.
No, that's totally not true. First of all, if anyone would like to come up and talk, they can.
Please ask
Right.
everyone to be respectful for the speaker.
First of all, we didn't know until the last minute, and I'd have to go through my calendar to check out the exact dates of when we actually signed the contract with Spartan. That contract entailed Spartan making all those contacts with the police department, fire department, whoever they had to do, pull whatever permit they needed. And this is their business. This isn't some flim-flam organization. This was, Discover Central Mass, Worcester Chamber of Commerce, a whole lot of organizations were behind them coming to us to help them out in this problem.
But not to be disrespectful, it was run in a very flim-flam manner.
Well, I totally agree with you, and that's why we stepped in. We called the police ourselves and straightened it out. From noontime on, there were no issues. Unfortunately, in the morning, there were a couple issues. And I think that is some of the kinks of any new business. I think there's other situations we can look at all around town and see same things are going on. When you open your doors, sometimes you don't exactly know how to move your facility and people around it and so on and so forth. I don't think I'm alone in that problem. So, we're putting our best foot forward. As soon as we knew there was a problem, we stepped in, we took over. We called the police, we did what we were supposed to do. We were unaware of the parking legality issues, but now that's covered under cease and desist. That's through the zoning enforcement officer and building commissioner, and that's his department. You know, if you want me to sit here in the chair and just, you know, let everybody come up and tell their tale of woe, I'm more than happy to do so. But
Mr. Swenson, did you have something you want to say? Mr. Singer and Mr. McGrath, and we have someone from the audience. Mr. Singer?
So, yeah, just a quick point. So, I mean, right now, you're operating under the cease and desist regarding that, so that's a moot point. Going forward, I would tell you, when organizations like that approach you in your business and they want to do things on your property, as you now well know, you can't take their word for it that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And even though
Absolutely.
people say, well, it's not this or it's not that, Worcester, you know, but whoever groups are behind it, I can tell you, someone who also runs races and knows a lot of runners in the community, Town of Plymouth, twice, I think just in the last year, has had problems with these big races coming in, taking people's money, then they don't show up. So these big races, no matter who's behind them, it really means nothing. In the Town of Plymouth, I can tell you, got tons of angry phone calls, and the Town of Plymouth was like, but we don't do it. It was them, they came in through the chambers. It doesn't make a difference. The Town of Plymouth had to deal with irate people. The Town of Charlton has to deal with irate people. So going forward, if they ever come to you or someone else again comes to you and says, we want to do this, my suggestion would be, that's fine, don't ever take their word for it. Have them pay you extra to have you do it yourself so that you know it's done.
Mr. McGrath?
One of the things I want to say is, even though I spoke about that calmly, the discussion that Russell and I had about this when it was a little bit after it happened was not as calm. I was a little hot under the collar, and for all the same reasons that you said. And one of the things he did mention to me is that it was a hard lesson to learn, that you can't trust people when you allow
But as you are aware, I don't know how many times you've come before our board and have been to other meetings with yourself, many of these people here, that you're in a very high-profile situation and should be treading pretty carefully, that people are watching. So I understand the growing pains, but you should also be aware of the position you're also in. There was a lady who'd like to speak. Ma'am, could you please make sure you speak right into the microphone. Please keep all comments on point and.
Lauren. So I'm Laura McHugh of 8 Lad Road, Sturbridge. I have a hard time with what gets said at these meetings because it generally ends up not being true. You said there was a situation, we called the police, it was taken care of. You know you're not supposed to use Lad Road. You exited thousands of buses.
Address all comments through the chair.
Well, he knows, and that was from a meeting previous to this, before the cease and desist. It had been brought up at 2 meetings, that venue cannot use Lad Road as coming and going. The buses started at 4 o'clock in the morning and ended at 10 o'clock at night for 2 days. Now, he says, I brought the police in and the situation was rectified by noon. No, it wasn't. I couldn't get out my driveway sometimes. We couldn't walk down the street with the dog. I mean, the road's not wide enough for a bus and a car to go down. So to sit here and say, we talked to the police, it was rectified by noon, is simply not true.
Mr. Jennings?
Well, first of all, the whole Lad Road issue, that is, that's being covered by cease and desist right now. So that's a whole nother subject matter that is really in the hands of the zoning enforcement officer. Up until that cease and desist, as I have mentioned numerous times at this board, at any other board in town, I've always believed that our right to use Lad Road is our right to use Lad Road. I did sit here and tell your board for our event that was scheduled with your board for a liquor license, I would not use that road, and I didn't. That's the truth.
And just to echo a comment there, the board, our jurisdiction, ends at these special events, where when we permit these special events, that we can put permits on, but we can't do permanent conditions. And that falls under the planning, zoning enforcement officer, and the like.
Absolutely. So that's the issue before that board at this point in time. But by all means, when we discussed it with your board, we held true to that. On the day of the event, no traffic exited that road
Mr. McGrath?
from our facility.
So I believe the cease and desist also covers Lad Road now, also, saying that you can't use it for basically anything to do with the property events.
That is what the cease and desist does say,
That's what I want to make sure.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ma'am, did you have something? Please come forward, speak right into the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record.
It's Amy Stanley, 6 Sydney
Make sure
Circle.
you speak, pull the mic right into you.
Sorry. Okay, Amy Stanley, 6 Sydney Circle. What I would like to know, and I'm awfully sorry, I had emailed, when I saw those signs up, I emailed 508 International. I know they've said, you guys said we should have conversations and discuss when something comes up. I was emailed back, sorry. It says, "Good evening, we do not have an event at 508 International this weekend. Thank you, the 508 International team." We're asking as neighbors to be informed of what's going on. And for them to completely deny, I don't get it. And how much, could I have a huge party with thousands, hundreds of buses? Is there any repercussions?
Mr. McGrath?
I think the repercussion, Amy, was that he received a cease and desist to stop this.
Okay.
Okay, that's the repercussion on this. Those are the tools that we have to use to try and straighten out what we have to straighten out.
Mr. Singer?
I think it would be good for everyone here, for the representatives from 508 and the citizens to know, if we can tell them, what are the repercussions of violating a cease and desist. So that these residents who are concerned about it, which is why the cease and desist was issued in the first place, and so that Mr. Jennings, who's trying to abide by everything, all know if things don't go the way they're supposed to, what are the next steps? Or what could the possible repercussions be for violating a cease and desist?
Thank you. Would that be under the purview of the zoning enforcement officer?
Yes.
Mr. Meskis, can I ask you to please come forward and speak on the issue? For the repercussions of violating the cease and desist, please.
Hi, Russ.
Hi, Kurt.
Kurt Meskis, Zoning Enforcement Officer, Building Commissioner. Zoning violations can be handled two ways. The first, well, actually three. The first step is that you have to warn the offender of the violation and issue that cease and desist and ask them to voluntarily come into compliance. In this case, because of the magnitude, we went right to a cease and desist, because we always want to have voluntary compliance. It's a neighborly thing to do. After that, a zoning violation can be a non-criminal citation, which is similar to a traffic ticket. It's $50 a day per occurrence per day. And I can issue those. Those are appealable to the clerk magistrate. If the offender does not appeal those, then a criminal citation can be issued, asked for by me and issued by the clerk magistrate for continued violations. I've never risen to that level. Most people have come into compliance once they receive a few green stamps or, tickets for that. There also is, with assisted legal counsel, the potential to seek an injunction through the court system. Never been to that extent at this point with anything either, but and all of these have some sort of appeal clause to them. The cease and desist, in my opinion, or my order, is appealable to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Mr. Jennings and his crew could do that to say that I was in error in issuing these, or it didn't happen, or whatever they wanted to do. And then, like I say, the citations themselves are appealable in 21 days to the clerk magistrate. The payment of the fine does not absolve them of the violation. If the violation continues, even though they paid a fine, it can continue to accrue at $50 a day per violation. And an injunction would probably be a contempt of court issue, because it would be issued by a judge. And that would be an interesting learning experience for me, because I've never had to go that far.
Thank you. Mr. Swenson?
I just have a couple of questions, and I'll apologize if I haven't been following this well enough. Russ, was there something in place before the Spartan event that you weren't supposed to use Ladd Road?
No.
There was?
No,
So
there was not.
nothing in writing, there was no, well, I know it wasn't come from this board, or from planning board or zoning that said, don't use Ladd Road. There was,
Never.
okay, thank you. Then I guess my only other thing that keeps sticking in my mind is that,
And just,
let me finish if I
Okay.
could. Oh, no,
Sure.
go ahead.
If I could just address that last comment. I had several conversations with both the chief in Charlton and the chief in Sturbridge. And I said, if I'm in violation of using Ladd Road by anything that you know of, please present me with the information, and I will immediately stop using Ladd Road. That's conversations with both Chief Charette and Chief Ford. On our site plan, it lists emergency exit down Ladd Road, but it does not say only. And there is no documentation in our planning board decision that states we cannot use Ladd Road for any purposes whatsoever. So up until the cease and desist from Mr. Meskis, there was nothing formal in writing from anyone saying that we could not use Ladd Road. It was discussed at your board meeting about the use of Ladd Road, at which time I said, I will not use Ladd Road for that event that was scheduled, just to take that off the table so there was no issue whatsoever with your board there. Prior to the cease and desist, nothing in writing has ever crossed anyone's desk, to my knowledge, and if it has, to someone else's desk, they're more than welcome to present that information to your board and to myself, and I'd love to see it, stating we cannot use Ladd Road.
Mr. McGrath?
So, Russ, we went over this the last time we had a discussion about this.
Yep.
And I got a little hot about it. And my last question to you when we had that discussion was, when you did your traffic study that you submitted to the planning board, what was that traffic study for? It was for Brookfield Road. This is recapping the whole
Yes.
conversation and I said that if I was sitting on the planning board, as I did for many years, and you handed that with the information that you had that your engineer supplied on the plan, saying emergency exit, I would draw to the conclusion that you wouldn't be using Ladd Road as an exit from your functions, okay? And that's just me. I know it's not, maybe when the planning board was doing their thing, they should have taken some more time in doing it and dotting the i's and crossing the t's, but I believe the understanding at the planning board was the same thing that I had after talking with the town planner. So, when we had that discussion, I think that's where we had left it, that you wouldn't use the Ladd Road for anything. Whether you were sanctioned the event or it was somebody else using your property, especially to that degree that they did. that they wouldn't use Lad Road. So I was a little disappointed when I heard that they had used Lad Road. And I understand your feeling that there's other developable land that you have down on Lad Road that you don't want to preclude the use of Lad Road for anything to do with, you know, with you, Brent, you know, and that, I understand that. But, you know, having to go to a cease and desist for this portion of it was disappointing.
So to further the conversation, I feel like that question has been answered. Just to start wrapping up this conversation, we'll only take a couple more comments.
Well, I'm sorry I interrupted.
No,
that,
and I thank you. You really addressed my main concern. And I guess the main thing that's left just sticking in my mind, and I really can't offer an answer for it, is that having gone through this whole process from inception to where we are now, is one of the biggest issues that we heard was people were concerned about it affecting their quality of life. That's where a lot of the noise discussions came from and things like that. And just from my own perspective, I think a lot of those issues were addressed well by yourself and your group. I guess my concern is, as we sit here, that it's still having a major impact on people's quality of life. And as a resident, as someone who lives in this town, I just have been listening to this, thinking about what would I be doing, also living on a dead-end street, if I couldn't get out of my street, or I couldn't walk my dog down my street because all this was happening. It is having a negative impact on people's quality of life down there, and I'm just concerned, are we gonna be able to get to the point where it's not?
Well, that has always been the objective of using Route 49 for both entrance and exit. That's in the long-term plan. It doesn't affect Brookfield Road. The use of Lad Road was partly assisting that because you split the traffic in half. Traffic enters off Brookfield Road, exits off Lad Road. It affects two houses that the majority of the traffic is going by their house anyways, because not only is there frontage on Lad Road, but it's also on 49. So whether it passes by the side of their house or the front of their house, it still passes by their house. It's still the same traffic count, because people who are going to Auburn or Worcester would come back out Brookfield Road, take a right. People who are going to Sturbridge would go out, take a left out of Brookfield Road, go to the end of Brookfield Road at 49, take a left, and go down 49 towards Sturbridge. Eventually, long-term planning, we've always wanted to come in and out on 49, and that alleviates Brookfield Road, and that's the correct direction for the project. And we've never been bashful about that. We started there. We started at Mass DOT and said, we're not going to do this project unless we know today that we can get out on Lad Road, on 49, I'm sorry. And that was the very first step that we took, because
I would say we're getting beyond the scope of this meeting and this current discussion, so I'd ask that we would start wrapping up. I know Ms. Craver has something she wants to say. We have two comments from the audience we'll get to. Ms. Craver?
I just wanted to add a piece, not to continue with Lad Road, but in my research for you and in reporting back on the use of Lad Road, I did have several conversations with the town planner. It's his contention that per the site plan review, and when they're operating under what they have been permitted for, that Lad Road is for emergency vehicles only. And he said they did not put only because they thought it was understood. I have told him the discussions and the confusion that have happened in your hearings, and he has said that he will address this with the planning board and clarify their intention, whether it is for the purposes of the operations of the site plan, whether or not it is only for emergency. And I believe that he will be submitting some letter to clarify that. The other piece is, I also had a call from the town manager in Sturbridge that he had a call about trucks using Lad Road for construction. I had another conversation with the town planner, and I want to clarify that the site plan review restricts the use of the this approved site plan activity on Lad Road. When they held hearings, there was no conversation about the use of Lad Road during the construction period. They are not prohibited at this time to using Lad Road for construction purposes, unless the zoning official has somehow, restricted that. But I want to be clear, my memory serves me that this project is planned in phases. And the phase that they are at this point in time, Lad Road for use during their, just say that, and I agree, I think that Russ has been planning ahead. We're only talking about today and the permitting issues, the permitted use within the site plan review for this portion.
Correct.
So I just want to say that. I also just want to say that I also had a conversation with the town manager in Sturbridge. 508, and I'm saying this in case we have Sturbridge residents, because I know we had a lot of the comments come from the town of Sturbridge. 508 has said that they will be reaching out to the town manager in Sturbridge to start a dialogue to assist those residents also. So I appreciate their willingness to, and being proactive in trying to work with the towns.
Very quickly, and it'll be my last comment on this, is I'd like to, I think based on what Ms. Craver started her point on, is that I think a little bit of this has to go back to the planning board. I mean, I've seen site plan reviews and plans go through where developers and builders are told not only the number of shrubs they have to put in, but the places they have to be put in and things like that. And for the planning board to say it didn't say only because it thought it was understood. To me, my own personal opinion is that doesn't cut it.
They're going to clarify it.
Thank you, and that's going to
Thank
be August 6th, I think, is their next meeting? August 9th. So, sir, please say your name for a record and your
Sure.
address.
Ron Charette, 205 Brookfield Road. Mr. Chairman, I think that the traffic jam that the Spartan Race parking lot caused on Brookfield Road was an absolute nightmare. Not only for the residents, but I have to believe for the 508 owners as well. I don't think anybody ever anticipated the parking lot that was created that day. I mean, I was out in the front garden at 5:30 in the morning. There were a few cars. By 6 o'clock, there were more cars. By 7 o'clock, there was a line of cars. And I think the grave concern that many of us had is, what if something major happened? That there had been no thought about this. There had been no communication about this. There had been no planning about this. There had been no directive of what could happen. And again, I think that really scared a lot of us. Many of the folks that waited in that line got irate and started doing three-point turns into our driveways, into properties, because they got tired of waiting, which is understandable. I could hear from my yard the parkers, the folks that were trying to park the cars, and the frustrations they were having with the volumes of people making that left-hand turn in there. A real concern, at the end of the day, were the Worcester school bus drivers, literally tearing up Brookfield Road. I would tell you, going 55, 65 miles an hour in their effort to get back to retrieve their passengers. They should have been given tickets. And whoever gives them their license or their CDLs ought to be contacted and told, your drivers, whether they're driving our kids to school or driving passengers for an event, should never be driving 50, 60 miles an hour on a 35-mile-an-hour road. Put all of us at risk. Clearly, this whole project has got two dangling participles at the end of the sentence. One is communication, and the other is trust. Communication is probably the easier of the two, and I think that we need stronger communication between 508 and those of us that are concerned about the project, so we know what's happening, that we could plan. If we'd have planned that weekend, if we'd have known that Saturday that the traffic jam was going to be even 1/10 of what it was, I think people would have planned their day differently. And I think a lot of the angst that the traffic jam caused could have been alleviated. I don't believe that the 508 folks even anticipated that it would be to the amount that it was. The last issue is trust. And whatever end result this project takes, trust is really important. And trust is lacking right now. There's no trust in government. There's no trust in 508. There's no trust in the residents. That's something we've got to look at. We've got to build. We've got to rebuild. We've lost a lot of trust in elected officials and appointed officials in this town over this project, rightly or wrongly. That's got to be rebuilt. We've lost a lot of trust over some of our neighbors that we've lived beside for many years, decades. Hopefully that could be rebuilt. But those are two very, very clear issues for me. Brookfield Road is a 35-mile-an-hour road. I'm going to ask any member of this board to come down and sit in my driveway any day of the week and tell me you see any vehicle going 35 miles an hour or less. So clearly, communication and planning are key. And this is what scared us. Was this a precursor of future events? Are we going to have this as a regular basis or not? I don't believe we will. I don't think that the magnitude of the traffic jam would be repeated. I think there's been lessons learned by the people doing the parking. But the anxiety that it created on that Saturday in particular, Sunday was much less, but the anxiety that it created in that neighborhood on that Saturday, I have never seen in all the years I've lived here in this town. So I appreciate efforts to communicate better and plan better so that the residents are not put in that situation where they're fearful of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sir, this will be the last comment. So please make sure you state your name and address right at the microphone, please, for our record, and make sure all comments are respectful.
My name is David Barnacle. I live at 7 Lad Road. I'd like to bring the board back, with the chairman's permission, to the board's purview. Mr. Jennings indicated that nowhere is it written that Lad Road should not be used, and part of the reason is because Mr. Jennings did not ask for a special permit. Mr. Jennings had 10 days to ask for a special permit. Mr. Jennings would rather not ask for permission, but later beg for forgiveness. That's not acceptable to this board, or it should not be. One of the things that he should have done is ask the board for a special permit. When he wanted to have bands on his property, he asked for a special permit. When he wants to do other things that require a special permit, he asks for it. But nowhere did he ask for you to approve of this. And had you approved of it, there is no way on God's green earth you would have approved for bus traffic to begin at earlier than 6 o'clock in the morning. Nowhere would you have agreed to have buses running between 8 and 10 at night.
Right.
And I argue your idea at the very beginning of this meeting, when you said it was not your responsibility. Mr. Jennings erred. Mr. Jennings did not follow through, he did not get a permit, and you guys are responsible for issuing that permit.
And sir,
What permit?
action has been taken that has been a cease and desist.
No. You see, the cease and desist is part of the planning issue. It's part of the planning board's plan. Most of the items on it have specifically to do with the planning board, not with any special events. That is a motocross plan, and it is other venues planned for sporting events. Nowhere does it say anything about parking. That's a special 2-day event. And for a special event, you are the board that has to issue permission. That specifically did not happen because Mr. Jennings did not ask for it.
Ms. Greer, did you have a comment?
You are saying that this board permits special events. We did receive some special events. We're taking a look at what this board actually does approve. This board does approve one-day alcohol licenses. This board approves entertainment licenses at licensed facilities that already are cited. It's questionable at this point whether or not this board has the authority to approve of a special event in a place where it's not already a venue that's already cited for that type of thing in zoning. So
Then, Ms.
we're
Greer-
looking at this, we're not exactly sure that we are.
May I ask
understand your
whose
approach.
responsibility it might be? Because even Mr. Jennings doesn't know who to apply to.
And he's made those applications, and we're sending them to the boards that would have, and collecting information on which boards would permit.
But apparently, no questions were asked relative to a huge parking job. Huge. We have counted 600 buses just on Ladd Road. And I'm not arguing about use of Ladd Road. I'm arguing that a permit needed to be issued for a mega event like this, and no permit was sought. That should be corrected somehow. Someone's got to be responsible for that fiasco. There was traffic stopped. There was traffic stopped on Route 49. There was traffic stopped at the junction of Route 9 and Route 49 because of the huge amount of traffic. There were complaints in Spencer because of that. And yet, he is absolved of all responsibility.
Mr. Barnacle, I would argue that, one, that we understand your frustration. And that's why we're here, that's why we're discussing this. Two, you're right, it's a gray line about where our board's jurisdiction ends and where it begins. It could be argued either way, that it's a special event or not a special event. And this board has been, striving to make sure it does not overstep its boundaries. And three, I would argue that there was repercussions. There was a cease and desist order because of this event. So because of this event that happened because of the Spartan race, that a cease and desist order was given out. So when you say there's no repercussions, there was a significant repercussion. Mr. Singer?
I have nothing to say.
Are there any more comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate everyone coming out tonight and speaking on this event and bringing us to attention. And we're very aware of how sensitive this issue is for the abutters, people involved in the property, different public officials. One thing that was brought up about communication, Ms. Craver's memo, she mentioned that Mr. Borio and Ms. Howard were designated as agents of 508. Mr. Jennings, I would ask that you would streamline the process and give out people a number, say if you want more information about an event or levy a complaint, have one number, have one email or two emails that people can use and communicate these things so they can be in open channels. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I think that's at least one step in the right direction to help that communication process. Mr. Swenson?
I know I said I wasn't going to say anything else, but I shouldn't say I'm never going to say anything else. Just for my own education, Mr. Barnacle's point just got me thinking about this a little bit. I believe that any activity that isn't listed as an allowed use through the whole development process would require a special permit. And I think it's incumbent upon 508, and it's incumbent upon this board to know what those allowed uses are and what those allowed uses are not. And I think anything that comes up that is not listed as an allowed use, again, would require a special permit from this board. I guess I'm concerned on both sides of it. I'm concerned that it's not, I'll err on the side of caution and give people the benefit of the doubt in saying that it's very possible that it's not clear enough to 508 when they need to get a special permit and when they don't need to get a special permit. And I'll say this to us, I don't think it's clear enough to us when we need to issue, for what we need to issue a special permit and what we don't.
Ms. Craver?
First of all, 508 hasn't asked us that I know of, what they need a special permit. They have submitted to us one-day liquor licenses, which they've used as an event. I haven't seen in the bylaws where the Board of Selectmen has authority on special permits, so I need to go and take a look at that.
Okay.
And I have put that down as a question mark. It's nice to say the board has the ability to do these things, but you may not have the authority to do special permits. You also, I would question whether or not you would have the authority to do a special permit on a piece of land that isn't zoned properly, or would you even consider doing some of that? So I need to find out some more information on what your authority is
Okay.
Before we continue that
Okay,
conversation.
okay.
Absolutely, and to Mr. Barnacle's point, he raises some very good points, that it is a gray area where our jurisdiction, ends. And when we say special permit, I believe we issue special event permits. correct? And special
Well,
liquor licenses.
there's certain special events that you do, which is on the town common, because they are happening on town land. And those are the special event permits that I'm aware of that you are authorized. Now, special events outside on private property, I know that you would do the liquor license, one-day liquor licenses. You would do entertainment at proper establishments that has been signed off by the building commissioner. But beyond that, amusement, I mean, there's certain licenses that you have and things that you permit, but a special event on a private property, I'm not so sure. So I just want some time to look at that.
Absolutely, and just to bring up a point of our next meeting tomorrow night, our goals and objectives meetings, one of my goals that I'm bringing forward to the board is seeing how we structure our permit and where our jurisdiction actually lies, and seeing, if everything's up to date. So that's one of my priorities that I'm bringing to the board. So that's something that we're actively looking at, and I appreciate, your and our office's further research on this. Mr. McGrath?
More of a question to the building commissioner. I know he loves hearing questions, but Kurt, if this project was all approved with the parking and everything else, would you have still been able to issue a cease and desist?
The reason I issued a cease and desist for this was it was being used as an off-premises parking, and it was not being used for its function.
So it would.
So I would conjecture that if it was to be used for parking for an off-premises event again, even though it has a site plan approval for parking for its use, that may be a violation.
So, in my recollection, this board has nothing for off-site, off-premises parking special permits.
As Ms. Craver has alluded to, is that there are some very specific things that this board has jurisdiction over. There are some things that are use-orientated that may come under the purview of zoning, and there is an event permit that this town does not have. So oftentimes I'm asked about things like this. So a carnival that wanted to come to a property, what permitting is required? Well, is this an amusement device? It has some of those components. Is it electrically operated? It has an electrical permit component to it. It has some state licensing to it. And we have no real mechanism for dealing with that kind of event. Other communities have event permits. The city of Worcester, as an example, has a licensing board that deals with the Greek picnic, the carnival, and all those things that occur regularly, just as Ms. Craver mentioned Old Home Day, which is a town function held on town property. You grant things for that. The fire department wants a road closure. That's under your purview. But we are now in Charlton approaching the point where we need to consider how special events that should have some regulation and oversight are handled, but also be aware of that people have weddings in their yards, and is that a special event? Very special for the bride and groom, can result in a lot of parking on a side street. And those are some of the things that I wrestle with when these questions are asked of me, is what is the specifics of the instance and what is the harm?
So going forward, whose job is what? Whose responsibility is whose? So going forward, that's something that I would like to see our board take a hard look at. Mr. Singer, then Mr. Swenson, and then we'll finish the appointment.
I would point out, well, I agree, but I know it's frustrating for the people who are here and those who have come before, but the reality is, and people don't like to hear this, but I liken sometimes people coming to the Board of Selectmen wanting something sometimes to asking the fire chief or complaining to the fire chief, how come your firefighter didn't arrest that person? You know, they work for the town and they're town employees, they have a role in town, but they can't do what they don't have the authority to do. This board can do some great things, but it has its restrictions. And I tell people a lot, and sometimes they don't get it, they don't believe me, that this is probably the least powerful board in the entire town. If you want to talk about boards with power to actually make things happen, you're talking planning, health. I would never say stop doing what you're doing now with us, because this is a great venue to get balls rolling, to make things public, and to keep things in the public eye, to make sure they continue to go. But I would ask you to please temper your frustration, because the fact is, there are things this board cannot do. As much as you might like us to be able to, or that we might like to be able to, there are certain things that we simply are not authorized to do. We can maybe give advice and point you in the right directions. We can help with things. And there are things that we certainly can do. And one of the things I was going to ask was for clarification on the parking, the permitting, because there is a lot. And we'll make a statement, and then we'll get another board in town who will say, you're stepping on our toes. You don't have the authority to do that. So it would be nice to have that clarification. Also, regarding the special events that he had just mentioned, and not knowing, well, there's a wedding or whatever, perhaps that should also be on our next agenda to start looking into that as well. Because if you're going to put together some kind of special permitting for those kinds of events going forward so that we have something in place and it's concrete and everyone knows, whether it's this board, planning board, a new board, who's going to do this, we start that now proactively and not reactively. And I'm sure when they do that, they can put in place thresholds so the wedding is not affected, you know, and what triggers certain things, but.
Just a question. Kurt, so it's Old Home Day weekend. I own a piece of land in my house just off the center of town. Is there any reason I can't charge people $10 and have them park all over my yard, like you see at the Woodstock Fair and all these other events and fairs? Is that, I can do that?
Given that, what I know.
There's
okay?
nothing to, I don't need.
Well, okay, what I know is that a parking lot for 5 or more cars requires a site plan approval from the planning board.
So you can park 4.
That aren't yours.
Even if it's not a permanent parking lot, just 2 days a year, I'm gonna do this, when it's Old Home Day.
That's the answer.
Okay.
Hence, Rick, was my question to him, because the planning board is approving his parking for the facility.
Right, and that's
You know,
what
what
kind
I'm
of,
saying.
that's what got me going down that road.
And I can see where there's
So,
confusion.
Well, if it's parking on his facility, whether it's for his event or any event, if it's parking on his facility and it's permanent for parking, so planning would have to put a special, under the uses, what's allowed or not allowed, they would have to put right in the allowed or disallowed parking for off-site events as well as a specified use.
So
So-
I appreciate the comments. I feel like we're
Yeah,
getting a little off topic
yeah.
now. I'm going to
I-
end discussion on this. We will be taking this up again at our next meeting, please.
be happy to have philosophical discussions with you offline at any time.
Well, and I was starting to get on that road, and that's why I
And,
nipped that in the bud, because
there
that wasn't
there
gonna be
are
productive
some
for tonight.
examples, concrete examples that I can give in a discussion to
Okay.
any resident
Yeah.
about anything, but, you know, my silo is something that has happened, not may happen.
Gotcha, yep, fair enough, thank you.
So our next regular meeting, we'll be discussing topics pertaining to this. Will be August 15th. There may be some permits, event permits coming to our board for review. Also, hopefully, we'll be able to present any of the findings that we find concerning bylaws and jurisdictions. So thank you all again for coming out tonight. I know it's very emotional and it means a lot to a lot of people here, so I appreciate all the very civil discussions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll now move on to our 7:30 appointment for the Municipal Building Committee report. for archival storage and parking lot expansion. I do apologize for the delay, and I appreciate everyone who has come here for that, has stayed.
I do want to remind you that the Board of Health is planning on attending our executive session if they're still here.
I know I saw them
They
earlier.
were here, they might
Yeah, I
have
saw
gone
them
back to
earlier.
their thing, but, so I need to go get them when you're ready.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for the update.
Okay.
So now I will turn it over to you, Ms. Craver, to read the memo.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Fizz.
Yes, sir.
Haven't
Please
seen
see
you
attached.
Forever.
Please see the attached report from Kurt Meskis, Chairman of the Municipal Building Committee, which has been working on the archival storage and parking lot expansion projects for the town hall. In May 2017, we bid out the archival storage project. The town received 3 bids, with the low bid being $449,900. The other bids were $527,000 and $554,300. In addition, the rolling filing system was $66,347, and a 10% contingency would have put the project at over $567,871. There's about $200,000 budgeted for this project. Mr. Meskis reports that the committee understands the need to store certain documents and look to build a separate building because the town hall does not have a fire sprinkler system, and we have too many documents to fit comfortably in any one space we currently have. His report has several options to consider that he will go through with you. And regarding the parking expansion, so there's 2 things that are going to come before you from the Municipal Building Committee. Regarding the parking lot expansion, Mr. Meskis' report states, to address the lack of off-street parking for the town hall, various schemes have been discussed to provide for a long-range plan, solid decision-making, and cost estimate for a selected plan. The town hired McClure Engineering to evaluate land owned behind the town hall that includes the field behind the homes to the south and connects with Muggett Hill Road. The municipal property behind the building is approximately 2.5 acres, is 100 feet deep, with wetlands beyond that and on an adjoining parcel. In addition, the elevation difference from the existing rear parking lot to the lower grade is about 25 feet. 4 pencil sketches were generated. Scheme A, similar to the configuration behind the library. Scheme B, a loop road from near the dumpsters across the back of the property to Muggett Hill. Both Scheme A and B were deemed unsuitable. Grades for the limited number of spaces added for work done was not cost effective. Scheme C adds a driveway off the right corner of the existing parking lot. 59 spaces on the existing field with a connection to Muggett Hill Road. The estimated cost for this work is over $600,000 or $10,000 a space. Scheme D adds a driveway on the north side of the building, reconfigures the parking in the rear building, adds a driveway off the right corner of the existing parking, 120 spaces on the existing field with a connection to Muggett Hill Road. The estimated cost for this work is over $1.2 million or $10,000 a space. The above cost estimates do not include existing soil conditions, exploration or testing, final design, costs, changes because of design changes, and construction management or easement costs. The committee at this time is working to keep the process open and transparent, solicit input and direction, answer questions, and to keep the board generally informed and look for direction as we move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you for entertaining our long discussion.
So, attached to Ms. Craver's memo is a 4-page memo, if you can call 4 pages a memo. I certainly didn't call it a brief, like some legal documents I see that aren't quite brief. We're at a crossroads here. We've been working on these projects in various, schemes and designs for a number of years. It has always been a goal that we provide some proper archival storage for our documents. Most of you have seen the room we have downstairs, or the rooms we've constructed downstairs that are just packed full. We certainly did not expect a construction estimate of over $500,000. It just doesn't. But when we analyze that cost, and looked at it on a square foot basis, when we spent $1.2 million out here for an elevator, the costs, seem to be real. Also backed up by the 3 bids that were relatively close to one another for the work. So the question is, and I hope you all had the time to read this report, because there's a lot of numbers in there and stuff like that. There's a few numbers missing that I'm going to enlighten you on here. But we did get this design. We liked the design. It answered a lot of storage questions. It took care of making it almost a separate building so that fire protection was not needed. I've always been hesitant to build a permanent file storage in this building because it would sort of be like building a toaster oven in the building. An economical way of doing it would basically to be buy a refrigerator box. They come aluminum panels with foam insulation, and you assemble, or a contractor assembles, and you get a size room that's insulated, climate controlled, and the such. But to put that in this building was always questionable about what fire protection we had. But when you juxtapose that against what value we may get by adding a fire sprinkler system to this building, if that's what we decide to do, the estimates, the very rough estimates, because there is no design, there's some square footage numbers. I reached out to a sprinkler contractor that I trust, that has done work in town before. A sprinkler system for this building would be in the $250,000 range. If we need a fire pump to go with that because of lack of pressure, we're on a municipal water line here. We did make provisions when we put the water lines into this building for sprinkler piping, the feed. That would add another $70,000 to the spring, and the disruption of piping a sprinkler system in an existing building. But it does give us protection of our town building when that happens, as opposed to having something outside. The other issue is how much paper do we need to store, and what legally are we required to store? So I reached out to the Secretary of State's office. Now, there's a whole slew of regulations that deal with public records. The law, according to the state archivist, the guy with a PhD who's at the top of the list there, says the law says permanent records need to be kept on paper. That means, in his estimation, the law says that the minute meetings from this meeting need to be kept on paper forever. I asked the question back, but this meeting is born digital. We record it digitally, we video it digitally, and we type it digitally. Yes, but the National Archives does not believe in digital. I did get another piece of information back from a staffer at the Secretary of State's office. Says, well, maybe that's not quite correct because it is born digital. If we didn't reduce it to paper, why do we have to have it in paper anyway? There are some things that we probably want to keep on paper. It is always copyable, but there is some paper I know of, that we all know of, that after a number of years, we all have some thermal fax paper in that drawer down there that is now a blank sheet, but we kept it on paper. There are files probably in our file system downstairs that if I took them out, the paper would crumble in my hand. So I have some arguments against storing things on paper forever. Records that we don't have to keep forever, according to the retention schedule, are easily kept digitally. But the advantage, as a champion of digital imaging for a long time, is the searchability, being able to find it. Because right now, we got a room full of boxes that have some labels on them. That's that. So what we should consider is whether we should maybe think about sprinkling this building, building a room within this building, if that's the way the town wants to go. We don't have a most efficient file storage system. We have cubbies. The $64,000 rolling file system triples your space in the same area. And I'm sorry I didn't bring a picture of it, but we've all seen it. You know, you've seen those big cabinets with the arm on the end and you roll, because you're only in one space at one time. Right now, we're using up a 36-inch aisle full of air. 2 of them, because we have 2 rooms. But we need some direction. And I don't expect an answer tonight, because this is a long-term project. So I'm going to stop at that point before we go on to parking.
Any comments from the board?
I,
Mr. Singer?
I agree with Mr. Meskis that there are probably many documents, maybe the majority are documents that certainly can be stored digitally. But I believe that we have certain records in this town that may go back to revolutionary times. You want those protected physically. You know, I'm sure that, like everything we talk about, there are thresholds. At some point, we need to draw a threshold. Is it Revolutionary time, Civil War era, where something from that period back, we need to preserve the original documents. And who knows whether it's the 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever that threshold is, digitize them and get them into a digital format. It may be a combination of both, and minimizing what we have to physically store based upon whatever threshold is created minimizes the end result and cost to have to physically store that. Instead of $500,000, it may come down to a lot less money.
Mr. Swenson?
Maybe I'm looking at it too simplistically. To me, it's a no-brainer that we would invest the money in putting a sprinkler system in this building. I don't. Building another building at $600,000 so that we don't have to put sprinklers in this building, I can't see a lot of logic in that. I really can't. As far as the record keeping goes, I know exactly what you mean by those. That may be the most efficient use of space. You know, I expect that over time, the official line on digital document storage may change. I agree with Mr. Singer that I'm sure there are historical documents down there for one reason or another that we want to keep. And just very quick, a number of years ago, I was in Washington, D.C. with my daughter. We went to the Hall of Records where they have the original Bill of Rights, the original Constitution, and at the time they happened to have on display one of the 2 remaining original copies of the Magna Carta. Now that loses something when you digitize it. So, I mean, for historical purposes, I agree, but from a practical standpoint of how do we go forward, my thought would be, I can't see why we wouldn't want to, what seems to be a more efficient use of money is sprinkler this building and build something inside, be it the rolling racks or whatever it is.
So, Mr. Meskis, can you install those rolling racks in our current setup?
I would think we would find a design that's appropriate that would include some sort of refrigerator box enclosure or some sort of, you know, additional rating and security enclosure, whether or not it's built out of block, whether or not it's built out of prefab panels.
So it has to have a certain fire resistance, a certain humidity, temperature range.
Right. Well, there's recommendations from the Secretary of State. Now, the gross recommendation from the Secretary of State is that it be a 6-hour rated room. There is no design I know of in building for a 6-hour rating. But if we put it in a 2-hour rated room and sprinkled it, you know, I think that's a reasonable solution. You know, and the thing about whether you keep the paper or not, digitization comes with a cost, which is outlined. We've been exploring those options. But it also comes with the cost savings because of the ability to search for records. I mean, yeah, we may keep the minutes, but I know, and I use this example often, is that Prindle Pond has come before this board numerous times over 40, 50 years. And somebody comes in and asks for that record of the selectmen's meeting back in the 60s of when Prindle Pond did this. and some staff person, probably Mary, is sitting there reading through page after page of minutes to find that. How amazing this technology is, I went to a facility in Connecticut. They were scanning Connecticut, I'm trying to think of what the right way to say it. Social services records. They have 1 hour from when that record hits the dock in their building to have it digitized, confirmed, and onto the system. They took a stack of paper 4 times the size of this, put it in a scanner that scanned 300 sheets a minute, both sides, to 99% accuracy. And now it's searchable.
Mr. Singer?
Never mind.
Mr. Swenson?
I'll let him enjoy it. It's okay.
No, I mean, I've got really nothing else to add. When you talk to you about that, you preach it to the choir. I get it. I
know,
completely
but-
get it.
And let's, just, I put the cards out on the table. There are a number of options. Additional discussion, I'm sure, is going to need to be had. This is a capital investment for the town of Charlton, that needs to be thoroughly researched, done correctly, as we've done with other things. We hire a professional to design a building that met our needs, well met our needs, but I don't think any of us think it's affordable or the right thing to do.
And we also, appreciate you and the building committee's work on this and preparing us and meeting with the designers and coming up with these alternatives. So we do appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely, and we thank you for that appreciation.
Mr. McGrath?
I will go along with Rick. We nearly, our jaws dropped when we saw the per square footage cost of doing a box, basically, and then putting the file system in it. And we knew that probably wouldn't be the way to go. Sprinkler in the building, I think, besides the document, the security of the documents and everything that we want to protect, I think it'd be a wise investment. I don't know what we would ever give back on the fire insurance, Robin, probably, also.
We may get something.
Yeah, because of a sprinkled building. So that's part of the cost benefit.
Their services.
Right. I would ask then, perhaps, direct the building committee to look at the cost for a rolling system with the proper enclosures, with a sprinkler system, and put that on the table as well.
So, Kurt, can you also talk about, I don't remember hearing in your presentation about downsizing, because that building, we had kind of bells and whistles and brick and
So,
green roof, and
Yeah.
have we talked about if it was just poured concrete with a top and without the frills? Have we talked about, or what that cost would be too?
well, in page 2 of my memo, I stepped through the analysis that we did. I sat before, came to the municipal building committee and says, okay, what do we do? Do we do nothing? All of those exercises. So we had a vision that was presented to us that we would put a green roof on this thing, meaning green grass, growing stuff. It would look nice from up here as opposed to a white flat roof and everything, which drives the price of the project up because you have to support all of that.
That's too bad, because sometimes when you guys stress me out, I gotta go outside.
Okay. But that's all gonna, that's gonna be a cause for a total redesign. Okay, so you might save $100,000 with that. There's some parts of the project that we could pull off of it, okay? We built a loading ramp, shown on that, it was a nice thing. It's a $64,000 add-on for that ramp, to have a loading dock ramp. I'll give that up in a heartbeat. But when we get done, you know, and we if we redesign, there's another 20, you know, 10 to 20,000 in redesign, so you take that out of the 100,000 you save, you take, you know, what's the bidding climate gonna be? You know, are we gonna do an exercise, should we do an exercise that, 450 to 500,000 instead of 550 to 600,000?
Give me an advantage.
The advantage, I think, that I see right now is that if we did take the same dollar amount as you suggested and put it into sprinkling this building, we've added value to this building.
No, I get that, excuse me,
I don't really see.
My question is, give me an advantage to doing the building.
I don't see it at this point, not when you're maybe
Exactly.
lopping $100,000 off. You know, there's some things, there's a ramp from the mid-level to get down to that lower level. Well, we're gonna do that sometime anyway. But when I talked to the contractor about what the savings would be, it just didn't seem to be there.
And my questions are not trying to take it in one direction or another. I just want you to think about all of the issues. And one advantage would be you would be creating more space. And one of the things you want to do in town hall is to go try and plan. So what are your needs going to be in 20 years? What are your needs going to be in 30 years? Do you plan on being in this building? You're talking about taking the last empty storage space that you have and utilizing that versus taking your records, pulling them out of the building in a controlled area. So there is an advantage to that. Now, is it worth $500,000? That's questionable. But I think you also want to be planning on whether or not you, and the other thought is, are these all exclusive, you know, mutually exclusive? Do you have to do one or the other? Can you be digitizing and still saving your records? Is there something that's downsizable? So I'm just, you know, trying to make sure you have all the options and look at all of the things. So one of the questions would be, what space needs are you going to need coming in the future?
Mr. McGrath?
Well, one of the things, and we discussed this, a lot of this, is, and my thought was, if we're gonna need space later on, and you know, we use up everything that we have here, I would rather put the money into a building addition that's usable for office / whatever we need, and use basically the older, you know, cut up portion of it for the file storage. That's, you know, that was one of my arguments when we discussed this, so.
My impression would be that once we committed and put in an elevator at over $1 million and other things that we did, we pretty much committed that we're gonna be in this building for the foreseeable future.
Till we're not here.
And you'll be using the basement and reallocating that area for fuller use.
It also seems like that the ways that we could save on space through digitization and the rolling file storage is that we might not need the 2 rooms, and maybe it would free up space for an additional room downstairs.
Well, if you're going to do the design as Mr. Veskis suggested, and you're gonna bring in these panels and you're gonna create it, you're gonna probably wanna do it once, instead of saying, well, we can do once and then expand. The other thing is that the municipal building committee, you have a building committee that's looking at the public safety building and possibly combining police and fire, which may also free up additional space so you kind of wanna keep in mind that 20-year kind of plan, where are you going
Is that
forward?
something, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but is that something that the municipal building committee does, do you think? Where are we going, where we do want to be?
Do they think?
Sometimes I don't think.
We do have some of the same people on that building committee. You're the chair?
Yes.
Okay.
But do you have those discussions about, you know, where does the town need
As
to be
far
in
as the
20,
building
30, 40
committee?
years? Excuse me?
As far as the building committee?
Space
As far as the
needs.
building committee and the
Build
overall
out.
needs of the town is
Yeah,
to-
we do look at that. We like to know what other committees are doing as far as their future and kind of hopefully work with them. That's part of our project or our description.
So in part of the, you know, one of the reasons in the transparency or bringing this forward is that you folks are the ones that are setting the vision for the town. So I could see potentially a new police fire station being built. We recognize the need that we absolutely need a new fire station. We may need to upgrade the police station. If those two functions went somewhere else, what would be the use for the police station? What would be the use for current headquarters station? What would be the use for the building, you know, the AKA highway garage on North Main Street?
Sure.
You know, well, if I was to venture, the building, the garage on North Main Street, if the fire department moves out of there, I think we might level that and turn that into a nice park or something. I can't, yeah. But the current police station, if it was to be vacated, has a lot of potential to it. But I can't forecast that from the municipal building committee perspective is where the town is gonna go. You know, I know there's things there. I have my finger in a lot of things, sometimes too many things. But I'm aware of what's going on. And there are some functions within this building that want to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
So to steer this in a direction, is the board wish to take any actions on this, or just direct?
The only thing I would do is thank the committee for their work and research and putting all this together.
Keep
and
researching on.
Keep,
that's
yeah,
all.
we keep
Yeah.
researching and, you know,
It'll
Ralph-
become clear.
Ralph will be looking for his check later.
you know, from my perspective, I'd just be looking for more detail along the lines of what we talked about, sprinkling and adding those, whatever has to be done to the building to accommodate the shelving units and.
Okay, so we can work on that, and you know, slow but steady has worked out well for us sometimes, you know. Just as if we can steer onto the parking lot expansion, you know, it's like, I've always been a proponent of design professionals and stuff, and getting plans, you know, let's have some plans that we can really talk about. You know, how are we gonna arrange this building? And when we hired Charlie Van Voorst to do the elevator design, we also looked at all the spaces. We had some WPI students that looked at spaces and gave us some input to it too. So it's like, okay, yeah, we could potentially get a lot of free dirt. Dirt ain't free. We know we own some land behind the town hall. We know this land goes out to Mugget Hill Road. We had it surveyed. We know where our boundaries are. Spending that money served us well because we knew where to put the curbs. We knew where our neighbor lived, and we knew where we lived. Okay, so that gave us topos, or the undulations of the property. And when you stand at the back guardrail there and look over that hill, would you say that it was 25 feet down? No, I wouldn't either. I had this great easy vision. We'll just bring in a couple of truckloads of fill and we'll pour it out there on the ground and we'll get some asphalt and Jerry could come and pave this and we'll have a wonderful thing. Yeah, build this big retaining wall to hold it all in place. That was one of the schemes that we didn't even consider. So we have schemes C and D. The green outline is our property line, the black outline is our building, the orange is our existing parking, and those little orange colors and other colors in there have to do with orientation of some sectional drawings that I'm not gonna bore you with, but it just shows the elevation difference. Estimated without getting any free material, $600,000
For the one on the right.
for scheme C. Does not give us a loop road around here to relieve some of the congestion. Doesn't say we can't add it, but it was, you know, one of the schemes we looked at. We had the professionals look at. He did cut and fill calculations. He did asphalt calculations. There's a relatively detailed estimate. We didn't just wag it $600,000. It was based on some actual quantitative numbers. Some lighting down there. You have a sidewalk along one side of it to get up here. You got this relatively steep elevation change on that curve. I mean, you look down to that sports field down there, which is our old septic system, just in case anybody's interested. That's why it's there. And that's what you get. Scheme D certainly is much nicer. It incorporates some things that we've desired for a long time. A driveway on this side so we can get around. Engineer says to me, yeah, but it's gonna be 8%. I says, well, what's 8%? You know, 8 cents on a dollar, I got that, but what's it comparable to? Well, a little steeper than the driveway on this side. Okay, thank you. Now I have a visual to give you folks a visual. Not ideal in the engineering realm, but it could happen. Lot of fill, okay? Free fill is good, but there's clear, the reason I say fill is not free is because you have to cut the trees. You have to grub the area. You have to have equipment here to spread and compact that fill as it's brought in, because you can't just keep dumping it in dump truck after dump truck load. Oh, and by the way, the fill for this area right here, 500 10-wheelers. Help me understand how, when you say X number of cubic feet, help me understand this, Mr. Engineer. Well, we use 13 yard. So you gotta almost build the access road to bring in the free fill. Do we wanna do it in parts? Can we do it in parts? Do we wanna abandon this whole thought because we're not gonna commit to spending the hundreds of thousands of dollars to gain this parking? Back to a question that was asked earlier. Yes, I believe we're in this building for the long term. I think we committed to this building when we put a heating system in it 10 years ago. And we put replacement windows in all over the place. And the elevator absolutely put the candle on the top of that cake and said, yep, we're here to stay. Because other than that, you're gonna knock this building down and start over. And is it the right lot at that point? I hope I'm not coming across as too flippant about it, but it is such an amazing process to have to deal with all of this and get, you know, have solid numbers to be able to present to you. Same thing, in 100 years, I would have never said this is $1.2 million worth of work, and okay, so we get $300,000-$400,000 worth of free fill. You're still $900,000 into a project.
I have never been involved in a project in this town where people didn't come up to you and say, you know, I can think of so many better things we could have used that money for. I just don't want to be around. We say, yeah, we're going to spend $1.2 million or $10,000 a parking space to put in a parking lot.
We'll make it back.
If we're going to do that, please wait till I'm out of town.
So the same questions become before the board. You know, is this where we want to go? Is this where you want your committee to go? What other considerations that we haven't seen need to be made? Maybe the question is that maybe we really need to look at moving the fire station, moving the police station, and taking the senior center out of this building, and that would give us a lot of some parking at a very low cost, because you know, right now, the town hall employees all park out on the town common.
Yeah.
There was an executive secretary here that was in charge one time, and he issued a memo that says, all town hall employees will park back here, and the senior says, so now where do we park?
Well, which is, again, it's getting late, I
Yeah.
don't want to beat this up. Is it feasible that if the senior center were someplace else, we have adequate parking for day-to-day business in this building? And would we for some time into the future?
We have 20, say, 30-some, 40-some spaces out back. When lunchtime comes, I'll come in, and they'll all be filled. I'll be out on inspections, and they'll all be filled because there's people using the senior center.
Yeah, again, but then my question is, if the senior center was elsewhere?
It would do a lot to alleviate the parking. The thing, because the town employees could park out back, they would be convenient to the building. The customers could come to the front. In our new arrangement, I've noticed that there's often good parking out front for customers, which is great. But the seniors take up a few spaces over here because they're handicapped accessible, and that, you know, has its issue. So, yeah, that's the long-range thinking that we're trying to do, but we're also, you know, making sure that we ask everybody we need to know, that needs to know where we want to go.
Absolutely. And I just do want to say thank you again for, you know, following through. and presenting all this information and getting through the design process. So thank you again to the building committee.
Yeah.
Like wrap up discussions on
No,
this.
I certainly understand.
I like being your devil's advocate, so I'm gonna stay in that role for tonight.
Good.
So you're talking about $10,000 per parking space, as if the only thing we're gonna get in these designs are parking. So I would invite the board to opine to the building committee on whether or not that access road is an important part of your growth. Again, I'm gonna keep saying that towns, I have watched where other communities have not planned well their egresses, their planning, their downtown. I don't know if we're gonna grow to the point that you would need that type of parking here. I know on special events, you could certainly use it, but you've done fine parking all the way up to Bay Path when you've had Old Home Day and other things. So I want to add that, you really want to look at this as a whole plan. It also, on the D, which is 1.2 million, and I hear the concern about the cost per space, but not only are you creating an access plan, evacuation plan for your town hall also, you're giving yourself a couple of egresses. You're also working with traffic flow and starting to bring it around the building versus going into that parking lot in the back. And God forbid if something happens, there's nowhere anyone's going to go because there's only one way in and one way out. So there is a value to that. Whether it's this project or not, I'm, again, just going to be the devil's advocate to say, I think that you also want to take a look at this in a 10, 20 years out. What is this town going to look like? Is there going to be much change downtown?
And I sincerely appreciate that. What keeps coming back, on two sides of it, what keeps coming back into my head is I just know someone in Boston that one single parking spot in their building in Boston sold for $1.3 million to park one
It's
car off
relative.
of Commonwealth Avenue. The other side of that is it wasn't that long ago in this building that we had department heads coming in because their budget had been cut so much they couldn't buy stamps to mail out bills. So,
And in 5 years, in 10 years, are you going to need it and go, geez, we could have done that for 1.2 million?
legit.
It's
Completely legitimate
it's a
point.
tough,
Yep, it's a completely legitimate point.
you're trying to
Mr.
plan.
One of the things I want to say is, the reason we're really looking at this in sort of a crunch time frame is that we know that the water line is going to generate some fill. We don't know how much fill the water line is going to generate, but we wanted to be in the position to say that we would have a place to accept that fill. Neither one of these take into account that we would get free fill, quote unquote, free.
That's correct. The cost estimates include buying material to do this.
So I feel
What's
if you
that
look at,
cost?
I'd have to go look that number up, but
if you look at Scheme C, it seems like that you could expand into Scheme D from Scheme C, and that might be a good starting point for $600,000, less price of fill. Now you're talking, more easily swallowable
Through-
numbers.
Through the chair. Russ, delivered fill now, right now, for $4?
More than
$8?
that. I'd say 6 to 7.
Dollars a ton?
No, yard, cubic yard.
But,
If you're lucky.
but would that fill from the water line be considered contaminated soil that we can't use for fill?
It's
No?
coming from the side of our road.
No. It's in,
Yeah,
it's in the
but
ground,
it's
yeah.
coming from the side of a road that's had 50 years of oil and salt and everything else stuffed onto it. But I'm just asking the question.
No, I would say no. It's gonna be like any other borrow that you get from other places.
You
It'd be
can always
like
just
the-
store it in the lot out back.
But that's why we're looking at this in this time frame that we are. We know we're gonna start digging, in two spots, basically, two locations. So,
And you may want to pick one and take it to town meeting and ask the town, do they think that this is a value or not? I mean, that also could be part of your plan around being transparent, is trying to go out to the people and find out how important is this.
We could definitely potentially add it to our capital plan. So,
Yeah.
with board want to take any action on that?
I wouldn't recommend it at this time.
Yeah, and I'm not asking for action. I thank you very much for our time here.
Thanks for all your work on these
And,
guys. Thank you.
you know, certainly willing to discuss, and anybody comes up with a great idea, sometimes, you know, in the middle of the night, that happens. And I know you have an executive session scheduled that you want to get to, so.
Can I just want to ask, because some people at home who enjoy that field may be asking, and it's not clear, do we lose the soccer, whatever field that is down there, by these plans,
Yeah,
by utilizing that?
I've talked to Todd Gerard, who's our recreation conservation agent, and he has alternate plans. He has said that they're not married to that space.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Mr. Meskis. Thank you, Mr. Fisk. I really
Good to
appreciate
see
you
you, Ralph. Thanks,
staying
guys.
and presenting this to us. We'll now move on to item number 1 under old business, a one-day special liquor license request to change date for the St. Joseph's Church.
Did it get hot in here, or is it me?
Ms. Graver?
Excuse me.
At the board's February 14th, 2017 meeting, you approved the special license request for St. Joe's Church for November 11th, 2017. The building commissioner, fire department, and police department all approved as well. Due to a conflict in their schedule, they are asking the board to allow them to change the date from November 11th to November 4th. The new dates on the license would be November 3rd to allow the delivery of alcohol to the establishment where no sales would be allowed, November 4th for the sale on the approved date and time as listed, November 5th to allow for pickup of any unused alcohol, and again, there would be no sales allowed. I would recommend the board approve this change in date for the special license as requested.
Thank you, Ms. Graver. What is your board's wishes for
I'll
this change?
I'll
of
move
date?
that we approve the change of date.
Second.
Thank you. A motion second to approve the change of date as requested. Mr. Singer, do you have a comment?
Nope.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes. Now move on to item number 2 under old business, regional dispatch. Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. As you know, it's been a goal of this board to work with neighboring towns to form regional partnerships to increase efficiency and save money. We have been successful in the areas of grant writing, regional veterans district, and stormwater. Presently, you have been reviewing the possibility of creating a regional dispatch center which promotes the objectives you hold as a priority. Regarding your regional dispatch efforts, you have received a grant to perform a feasibility study. The study was completed in March 2017, and we held a public hearing April 5th, 2017 in Oxford, where presentations were made by public safety officials, the consultant dispatchers, and managers. The community was invited to attend, and Charlton had good participation. Also, the managers and administrators met with the unions to create a draft personnel contract based on providing benefits that reflect mostly the maximum benefits of each town. All present employees would be grandfathered with the benefits they presently have, as well as receive additional benefits that any other town has that's higher, or be compensated accordingly. So, for example, if there's a provision in one of the contracts regarding health insurance, we may not be able to hold a higher percentage as the law does not allow different amounts. In that case, the grandfathered dispatchers would receive a cash equivalent in a stipend. The below savings are based on current staff, which we know cannot be maintained. Thus, in considering any savings, you should add another $75,000 for an additional dispatcher, bringing the savings to $202,142. Annual reoccurring cost savings of $108,142. I anticipate you will not have a dark station, so I would recommend considering $40,000 for a night shift admin that would assist residents as well as provide needed additional admin help. So the community, you can see the chart of the savings and the communities, the 5 communities that are considering joining is Charlton, Oxford, Southbridge, Spencer, and Sturbridge. Another consideration, as you know, is the Public Safety Building Committee. Is proposing a combined police and fire safety building. The projected timeline, if approved by town meeting, would be about the same time as the dispatch center would be coming online, a couple of years from now. It will be important for the building committee to know if it needs to plan for a dispatch center. The savings of not building that center would increase the proposed savings significantly. Tonight, you are asked to vote to take the next step in the process, which is to approve the IMA. We need a commitment to proceed from participating towns in order to apply for the design and construction grant. You have also been provided this document previously, and we have been tweaking it as needed. If you approve the IMA tonight, I recommend that you make the approval pending any language changes approved by the town managers and administrators and town councils.
Thank you, Ms. Creeper. Do you need action on directing the Public Safety Building Committee about combining the police fire with a regional dispatch center?
I think what I'm looking for tonight is your approval of the Regional Dispatch Center and to approve the IMA.
Okay.
The IMA has a contingency that certainly, as the towns are going through, if not all towns approve to join the IMA, we are not held to it unless there's at least a minimum of 3 towns.
Good. And what is the board's wishes about the IMA?
I'll make a motion that we approve the IMA to go into the regional dispatch center.
Thank you. And does that include pending any language changes approved by towns managers, administrators, and town councils?
It does.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Mr. Swenson?
If we have 3 or more towns that all sign the IMA, we're locked into doing this?
Yes.
Did you do any calculations, Ms. Craver, about, let's say, Spencer, Sturbridge, Charlton? Are they the only 3?
Yes, the savings are pretty much the same. We've recalculated the staffing would be reduced, and it would be still close. And again, okay.
Mr. Swenson?
My turn for devil's advocate. I'm hearing less than positive things about regional dispatch centers that have been in effect for a while, towns dropping out of them just not working as sold. So that concerns me. The other thing that concerns me, as I've stated since day one, I don't trust the state for a minute to maintain the subsidies and the funding that would make this fiscally viable. And I still have concerns about not having a police officer or having a real dispatcher up in that building. Admin addresses the dark building. I don't know if I'm 100% comfortable with how it addresses it.
Mr. Singer?
You have to, the building, I don't think legally can be dark. You have to have an officer present. If they bring a prisoner in, there has to be a police officer there 24/7. Guy, girl, something depending on what prisoner's brought in. They can't just have a dark building, and they can't just have an admin person. They have to have an officer there to be able to take in any prisoners.
So is that going to impact our savings?
I think we already have officers present for a night shift. I don't think that would change.
How many officers do we have on a 3rd shift now? 2?
I think it's 2.
I think it's 2 as well. So we have an officer that's going to sit and babysit a
No,
prisoner?
you're going to have someone. If you think about it, right now you have a dispatcher that's trying to maintain a console, and calls coming in, emergency, if it's a medical, they need to have their attention there. You're going to have better coverage for someone that's walking in, that may not be a police officer. The dispatcher's not a police officer, and the
So
dispatcher
right now,
is
if there's,
distracted.
right now, if there's someone in lockup, the dispatcher is considered the person there. There isn't an officer there with them. It's the dispatcher.
Yeah, so we would, that person, I'm saying admin, I'm not talking about having a clerk in there. I'm talking about having someone that is trained in public safety, that I'm not, when I say admin, I am not talking about hiring a desk sergeant or a police person to stay in the building. What I'm saying is a lower cost person, but certainly a trained person that would be ready to address any emergencies that people are coming in with.
Does that have to be
Mr. McGrath?
bargained?
Hmm?
Does that have to be bargained?
It depends on on what it is that you create as a job description, and I think that I guess I'm just confident that you'll be able to do that.
Mr.
That will
McGrath?
meet your
So,
needs.
when I went to the meeting over in Oxford, Rick, some of the questions that were brought up by other people and by myself were the same thing that you had talked about, people leaving married. most part, they all worked out pretty well. One of the towns that I used is down Hull, Hingham, Cohasset, and I believe Situate's involved in it. And so there's either 4, might even be 5, Norwell might also be brought into it. And there was a big uproar when they did it from the townspeople about, you know, problems with different named streets in different towns. A town like Hull with the huge influx of seasonal people and the DCR beach traffic, how they're gonna communicate with the state police net. It's actually been seamless. And when I talked with Phil Lemonos, the town manager down there, about it, and I did talk to the new police chief, they're very happy with it. And if I would say if there's disparate communities, that would definitely be a big thing there. So that made me feel a lot better about it, because I had some of the misgivings that you did. You know, some of my original misgivings with how we were gonna do the first one. You know, that's what I would call a geographical challenge.
I think the other thing too is that some of the stations that the regional dispatches that have had problems have been where it's in one town's police department, and one town ends up with more control than the other towns. You did not do that. You have been very clear that you wanted a standalone, that there would be a board of directors, which would be the administrators, and then there would be an operations. So these people would really be focused and more highly trained to be able to service us.
Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll move to, yes?
May I ask for the motion again? I'm sorry.
It's a long one, right?
Oh, can you summarize? Was it to approve the IMA?
Yes.
Thank you.
To
Can we
approve the
give-
IMA, pending any language changes approved by the town's managers, administrators, and town's council.
So, I just want to say it again, the actual
Good question.
motion, it was written in here, right, the motion?
At the bottom.
Right, so because this is, what, 1,
Is there?
2?
No, there's not an actual
I
motion.
didn't think I
There's a
did.
motion to approve the IMA, pending any language changes approved by the town's managers / administrators and town's council.
Okay, so we can do that and get her a copy of the IMA we're voting on?
She's got the,
I have it
You have
she
it
had-
already?
she
Already?
has the packet.
somewhere in this 100-something pages in front of me.
It's only 85. Plus this. Never mind. Is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Is everyone agreed of what the motion is?
Yes.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll move to a vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
Chair votes aye, motion passes 3 ayes, one no. We now move on to the town manager's report. I didn't see one in your packet.
No, sir. So just to give you a few, as you know, I've been on vacation, so I'm doing a lot of catch-up with many of the projects that are ongoing. We will be meeting tomorrow with Millennium, per our Millennium committee. So we're gonna meet with Millennium, and Sansucci will be coming to have a conversation with them, as well as Deb Ciccarini, regarding starting the negotiations for the next pilot or what happens next. Also, the Police Assessment Center, as you know, is scheduled for August 29th. Our consultant has been working with HR Director Jessica, and he's met with the police who are going to be participating. He's given them some sample schedules so that they are prepared to, and they know what will be happening. He had prepared to come and do a presentation and meet and sit with you, and get some of your thoughts about what you see would be important qualities in the next police chief. Unfortunately, he was unable to attend tonight's meeting, so I believe that we're setting up phone calls for you to each to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, he called me today, I wasn't able to talk to him.
Left me a
Today.
message too, yeah.
I talked to him.
Okay, so if you have a chance, please call him
Yeah.
back and try to follow through with that, so he has that information. And he'll be putting together the the assessment center based on the needs of the town, and that's one of the good things about being able to do this kind of assessment center. I am working with the Water Sewer Commission on their grants, and there's several things that you're gonna go into executive session. I'll have a conversation with you about there. And, as you mentioned, I did wanna make sure that you were aware of the dog hearing you did, the judge, agreed with you, and there is an appeal to that, so, we will, and it's coming up very quickly, so we're moving on that. And I have been in contact with the company that's doing the forensic audit. I'm anticipating that to be coming out shortly.
And hopefully be able to present any findings at our next meeting.
Completed.
Are there any questions for the town administrator?
How was your vacation?
It's nice, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me that time. I know it was a lot of time in a short amount of period, and I appreciate the board.
So then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
May I make one request?
Sure, I'm sorry, is there any other business under the town of
Just a
Poston?
simple request
Yep.
for the future, because I think I have to make it public in open session. I would like to see if we can get an agenda item for one of our next meetings to invite Mass DOT. I think we need to have conversations with Mass DOT about Route 20, two sections of Route 20, over by Ted's and over by Treehouse. We're already having problems, and we're gonna have a lot more problems.
I'm assuming you're talking about the new suicide lane?
Dude, well, not only that, it's backed up now. It's backed up for miles and backed up for miles, just trying to get through town now with the changes. And further down by Treehouse, that's another nightmare and another suicide thing waiting to happen,
It's Treehouse, and what's the other one?
right by Ted's.
That's where they re-laid out the road.
You come up there now, it's backed up for miles trying to get through.
So thank you, I'll ask you to work with the town administrator to set that for our August 15th meeting.
We'll work on that.
Any other business unknown at the time of posting? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion that we enter executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body regarding the clerical union, Southbridge landfill litigation, IMA, Casella zoning appeal, and number 6, to consider purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate, Exxon water line, pump station land purchase. If the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion and second. The chair does declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go by roll call vote. Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson?
Aye.
Mr. Singer?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now in executive session at 9:25 PM. Again, thank you all for staying tuned. Our next Board of Selectmen meeting will be our goals and objectives meeting tomorrow night, July 26th at 6 PM at 4 Dresser Hill. And also, our next regular meeting will be August 15th. Have a great night.